Okay, this time you guys get to sing it with them, and here's what's going to happen. You're going to sing it with them the next time with the band, but then after that time, the band's going to be done, and you're going to do it one more time, just your voices, because that's what we want to hear. We want you to come together with just one voice for Elkhart as we get this school year started. Everybody on your feet. Hit it. Race down the go Elkhart, race down the field, always with honor, never to yield. Brave lions roaring with pride, carry the blue and gold high. Rah, 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 to the future, cherish the past. One for all for one, stand up and cheer. Hey, go Elkhart, win for Elkhart, march on to victory. Go Elkhart, race down the field, always with honor, never to yield. Brave lions roaring with pride, carry the blue and gold high. Rah, 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 to the future, cherish the past. One for all for one, stand up and cheer. Hey, go Lions, win for Elkhart, march on to victory. Yeah! Excellent job. Thank you, band. Go Lions. And at this point, I will turn the microphone over to Carrie Mullet.
August of 2018, and a lot has happened in 3 years. I remember standing here and telling you, those of you who were here back in the day, 2018, that I was so nervous and that you might have to call the paramedics, and that I wanted you to know my medical history, that I had no known medical conditions, that I was A positive as far as blood type, and was not currently on any medications, just in case. So I don't think that's going to happen today. I feel pretty good. I feel pretty rested, except for I did wake up at 1 o'clock this morning. I was having a dream about binders. See, I knew you would relate to that. Having a dream about binders where I didn't have enough. And so I woke up and I thought, do I have enough binders? And I thought, yes. But then I started thinking of all the other things that I don't have. And so then, you start making a list of what do I have to go to Target and get in the next 24 hours. You know how it goes. And pretty soon it's like 3 o'clock before I fall back to sleep. So I don't think I'll have any sort of medical issue, and I hopefully won't fall asleep. But if I do, don't be alarmed. Just nudge me. Anyway, Elkhart Teachers Association, I know we have some new faces since I last spoke in front of you. That is the union that represents all certified staff for Elkhart Community Schools unless you're an administrator. So if you're sitting in the seat right now and you are under a teacher's contract, Elkhart Teachers Association is your group that represents you in contract negotiations, etc. I'm going to try to make this little doodad work, but, see, no promises. A very fast history because we have lots to do today. I don't know if you've seen the agenda, but it's pretty massive. But some of you might be interested to know that this started, Elkhart Teachers Association, way back in 1937 at the old Roosevelt on Indiana Avenue. There was a very liberal principal at that time that allowed some teachers to meet down in the basement of Roosevelt. Now, if you've ever been at Roosevelt, you realize that might be a bit spidery. Yeah, I heard scary. Yeah. I mean, in 1937, it was a much newer building, but I'm thinking, wow, that's some dedication. But they met in the basement working on how they could best get better working conditions and salary for teachers in Elkhart Community Schools. And believe it or not, even back in 1937, there was a teacher shortage. It's funny how things don't change over time. But that was going on even back then. Finally, in 1965, our school board recognized Elkhart Teachers Association as the exclusive rep of all Elkhart teachers, and we've been kind of going gangbusters ever since. Just some other food for thought. In 1973, that's when the state passed a law that allowed teachers to bargain for themselves and to begin to organize in that fashion. And ETA, I'm proud to be the leader of ETA. We are one of the largest teachers unions in the state, and we're also one of the most impactful. We're quite influential, both at the local level and at the state level. Jessica Ramirez, who is our secretary-treasurer, is on the board of directors, and she often goes to national events, and her input is sought on national-level topics. In Elkhart, we often get phone calls from various groups across the state asking for our input and our help. Just some business real quick. This is our great group at East Campus. I believe that was last year, but it was actually probably the year before that because I don't see any masks. But that was some of our Red for Ed swag. Some of you realize that there's a national movement called Red for Ed, where educators and people who support public education wear red on Wednesdays. And so that's kind of a sampling of what that might look like. It's been a while, though, since we've had any sort of Red for Ed apparel ordering. And so today I have on one of the styles that's available, but there's several that we have come up with to kind of start the year off right. So if you're interested in getting apparel that says Peace, Love, Red for Ed, there are hoodies, there's a football jersey, and then there's a regular t-shirt as well. I think there's V-neck and crew neck. But that QR code could get you there, that bit.ly link could get you there. And outside this auditorium on the table, there are little papers with that information that you can take with you and order later. It will come straight to your house, so it's super convenient. You pay your own way, it'll come to your house, and it'll be here soon. And I hope you'll join me in wearing Red for Ed gear on Wednesdays. That's open to anyone and everyone, from parents to school board members to administrators to teachers to custodians, and anyone in between, students. Whoever wants it can have it. We're all in this together. All right, just some food for thought, because I was thinking about how many new faces we have and old friends that have come back. They left and they came back, but we have kind of a new group, and we haven't been together in a long time. What's happening and where can I find that information? You might be kind of wondering, unless you're an old dog like me who's taught, this is my 23rd year in the classroom, you might be a little bit uncertain sometimes of where you can find info. So I was thinking about what advice would I give to someone who needs to know how to find stuff out. And so there's three main resources that I would recommend. One, of course, is the contract. Dr. Tellheimer was a little alarmed because I was carrying this around today. And he's thinking, good grief, Mullet, it's only been like 5 minutes since we got here. What could be the problem? But I just wanted people to know it's this ugly kind of like poo brown color currently. It changes every year. But if you don't have this, or you're new and you weren't given it by Human Resources, please ask your school secretary for a copy. Because like I said, most people sitting in these chairs today, your job terms are covered by this contract. And administrators, of course, need a copy of it as well because it pertains to what they do from day to day. Dr. Tallheimer has started his learning briefs. They come every Friday. I read them from the top to the bottom. I click on every single link. So if Friday was your first learning brief, you're in for a treat. I'm kind of a reader, though, and a bit of a nerd. But please read it thoroughly. There's tons of information about postings. There's tons of information about what's going on in Elkhart. And there's usually lots of thoughtful text that's put in there as well. So the learning brief is a great source of information. And then finally, of course, our Elkhart Community Schools website. It gets better and better every time I look at it. Brenda Colby and all of the folks that do kind of IT work are doing an amazing job updating that regularly and making sure that that information is available. And then last but not least, I'm going to give a shout out to ESC, the administration building. That is the main switchboard number, 262-5500. And if you need help and you're like, I have no idea what to do, Lois answers that phone, and she is just delightful, and she will help you figure out who you need to talk to if you need information. So hopefully that's just like a quick snapshot of where you can find what you need. However, for ETA members, I want to remind all of those folks that are sitting out there today, or even future ETA members, that you have a few other options besides the three on the left that I already mentioned. You receive email updates, you get a bi-monthly newsletter, and so on and so forth. There's social media, there are state and national resources that come your way, and then most importantly, that's why I put in that fancy color, you get direct support from ETA leadership like myself. You're welcome to email, text, call at your convenience, and I will get back to you as soon as possible, or someone else from the ETA leadership team will get to you as quickly as possible. So you have a bit more as far as options go. I also want to point out that Elkhart Teachers Association, as I said earlier, we've been around for decades, and we have a long history of working closely with administration to make sure that we're improving the quality of education for all students. And in order to do that, we of course need to be improving the quality of work for all employees. So that's very important to us. One of our number one jobs is to form a bargaining team to negotiate the terms of the master contract. Back to this doohickey-mabobber here. That's starting soon. We've started informal bargaining already, and formal bargaining will start September 15th, but that's one of our big jobs. Also, whether you are an ETA member or not, we do represent you if there's something in this contract, which is your kind of work agreement with Elkhart Community Schools. If there's something in here that's not being followed correctly, it is our duty to make sure that we represent you and make sure that the terms of the contract are being followed as they are written. Generally, that's related to wages and wage-related benefits like insurance or retirement plans. That's what most of this contract's about. But nevertheless, we do cover you with that. And then also, we love all employee groups, including custodians, bus drivers, paras, secretaries, administrators, the world, food service. And so ETA is always kind of an open door policy. So when we have our friends who work with us in buildings and across the district who have needs as well, they often reach out to us and we try to help navigate that for them and make life better for them too, because we're all in this together. Once again though, if you're an ETA member, you have kind of advanced support because these things are not necessarily in the contract or as well covered without that additional membership support. So that's just a quick list of things as an ETA member you receive that other people are not privy to. And some of the biggest ones are in dark print. So if you have an issue with your evaluation or you're having some sort of issue with discipline, either you personally, professionally, are having some sort of employee-employer situation, we can support you with that. Or if even there's a student situation like classroom management, ETA provides support also. On the very right, ISTA, which you automatically are a member of if you're part of Elkhart Teachers Association, they provide legal assistance. So your membership dues pay for having an attorney basically on referral already. In the unfortunate case that you ever run into some sort of charge from Child Protective Services brought against you, for example, that's generally where the attorney part comes in. The attorney from ISTA will come meet with you. He or she will go with you to any sort of interview situation and support you through that whole thing and help you get that worked out. Believe it or not, that happens more frequently across Indiana than you may realize. We have generally at least 8 of those situations here just within our district per year. So that's about 1% of us sitting in a teacher seat. It happens to brand new teachers. It happens to people that have worked for us for 4 decades. It has happened to someone more than once in a school year. And it is the most traumatic, scary thing you can ever imagine. And as someone who generally sits next to them and supports them, as well as the attorney, it's devastating for me to even watch a colleague have to go through that, where their integrity is being questioned, and that they're really, really having a tough time. So I don't wish that upon anyone, but I really want to stress the importance of that legal assistance piece that also pairs with that $1 million professional liability coverage. So that's just a quick review of that. Also, you might not be aware of exactly who is part of the ETA leadership team. I'm not even sure I introduced myself, by the way. I'm Carrie Mullet, President of Elkhart Teachers Association, but Kelly Brown is our Vice President. She is housed out of Beardsley, and Jessica Ramirez is at Northside. We have an ETA Board of Directors that direct my actions as President, and their names are listed there along with their building. They are an amazing group of folks that work so hard on everyone's behalf. And then each building has at least 2 building representatives. Some have quite a few more. But we have 55 building reps throughout Elkhart Community Schools. If any of those people on the screen are here, which you should be because it's your first contract day, remember? If you would stand, so that would be 55 plus a few more. If you'd stand just so people can kind of see your face real quick. Thank you. They are such like a bashful crowd. That was not like 60 people I just saw standing up, by the way. So I don't know who's going to take over presidency someday if they're that shy, but we'll get to it. If you are interested in becoming an ETA member, that is how you do so. There are some paper forms outside on the ETA table, but the fastest way is to go to the ISTA website and click Join Now. Administrators, you may also join ISTA and NEA. I don't want you to feel left out. The district won't let you be a part of this, but we would love to have you as part of the General Education Association family, so you are able to join as well, just not at the local level. But we would love to have you too. And one more piece of business, the Prg Committee is the monthly discussion group that meets with the superintendent and his administrative team. And then myself and several ETA members are part of that, where we discuss issues pertaining to all sorts of things across the district. It's kind of a hodgepodge agenda. Details of those meetings are in the learning brief, which is why you want to read that on Friday. But it meets the third Monday at 4:30 most months. It's always on Monday, usually the third Monday. But I am in need of one additional ETA member to serve on that team. So if someone out there is wondering about that or has always wanted to be a part of that, if you would send me an email expressing your interest, I would appreciate it. That would begin in September. I think it's the 20th. September 20th. So if you have any interest in joining discussion at the district level, please email me. And last but not least, because I'm getting long-winded, pretty soon Jake in the back is going to flash the lights at me and tell me to get off the stage. I just want to remind you about finding your people. A few years ago, I said to you that we were kind of in a flux, and Mark Mao was here. He had come back out to be our interim superintendent because we were in between leadership. And it was a very anxious, kind of daunting time. We were very uncertain about where we were going. We were very uncertain who was coming. And you could just kind of feel that anxiety kind of permeating. We were very anxious about the high school merge. And here we are sitting here today with a fight song. So we've come a long way. But I think it's important to realize that, as I told you then, if you were here, I'm always optimistically pragmatic or pragmatically optimistic. I'm not a true Pollyanna, but I do try to always look at the glass half full. And unfortunately, I cannot guarantee perfection. I wish I could. I wish I could guarantee you a perfect week. It is totally not going to be a perfect week. I already know it's going to be like really hard. And if you want to meet me at Hacienda Friday, I'll be there. So you can join me. I'll be there. And I know some of you are already making your Friday afternoon plan as well. But it's going to be really hard, and you're going to be very cranky. And people are going to get on your nerves, and you're not going to be able to find all your stuff, and your room might be a little dirty, and the list goes on and on and on. You probably don't have enough colored paper. It's not even payday this Friday. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be a little bit irked about. So I just want to remind people and encourage you that you have to find your people. I did not get permission to share these photos, so probably some of my friends are like, oh my gosh, why did you put that on there? But this is, what gets you through the day. And so if you're new here, or you perhaps unluckily started last year when you didn't even get to know people, it's important to find your people, because what this doesn't show is like earlier when some kid threw up on my shoe, or, those other things that this doesn't really show. But you need to find that support system. This was us in 2019. There was a presentation here, but I was out there talking to the media, and some of you were there at that time. We were having a big Red Fred event, but these are your people too. Many of them are still sitting here, and they're your family, and they can certainly help you. And then in 2019, that fall, those are your people too, 20,000 of them. So I want you to remember, no matter how kind of nutso it gets this week, this month, this year, you've got lots of people. So make sure you reach out. They're out there. Last but not least, don't forget, T-shirt order. I want you to look just like me. So, Dr. Thalheimer, he tried to trick me today. I don't think it was him specifically, but originally I was thinking I was speaking at 9:30. And so they put me at 8 without telling me, just to see if I'd be to work on time. Now, Holly Conley, my principal, knows that's rare. And so it was a trick, but they didn't get me. It's the first day of school, and I'm okay. But I would have come up with like this really flowery introduction for Dr. Thalheimer, but instead I'm just going to have to be a little more concise. But what I do know is in August of 2018, when I stood here, we had no idea Dr. Thalheimer was coming, and you all provided input to the ETA about who you were looking for in a leader. You wanted someone that remembered and recognized that elementary curriculum and elementary planning was just as important as high school. You wanted someone who was fair. You wanted someone who was a clear communicator. You wanted someone with vision. And so it's like we put all of that in sort of like a blender or a vending machine, and out popped Dr. Thalheimer. So like I said, things aren't going to be perfect, but I still say what I said 3 years ago. Everything's going to be okay. We're all here together. We've been surviving a pandemic. That's like a miracle right there. And so with no further ado, because I need to learn to be quiet, please give Dr. Thalheimer a warm welcome and have a really great day.
I'm glad she used the blender analogy and not a sausage machine. So I stand here in front of you this morning incredibly humbled yet again to be your superintendent and to welcome you back, and from the bottom of my heart to say thank you. All of you committing or recommitting to Elkhart Community Schools at this point in time is the most important thing you could do. And we all know, heading into the year, as Carrie said, it's not going to be perfect. There are challenges abounding for us every direction we look. And because of that, it is absolutely critical that you take a moment at some point today to pat yourself on the back for being here and to find those people that are going to be around you and be the supports and say thank you to them as well. When we knew going into this year was going to be challenging enough with students coming back to us who have not, some of them, been in a classroom for 18 months or ever, those kids are going to need us. When we look at academically where our students are, we all know that we have a long way to go with many of them to be able to know and do the things that we want them to know and do. But the most important thing we can do right now, as we've said all along, is that it is absolutely critical that we be the people that we need to be for those students. And you being here represents that at all kinds of different levels and for all kinds of different reasons. You know that. I wanted to take a moment this morning to kind of share with you my why. On this picture on the left there is Ronnie Thalheimer. Was born in the mid-1940s to Cletus and Catherine Thalheimer, the middle of three children that are being held there by my grandfather, Cletus. My dad and his two brothers grew up in a household where if there was an extra piece of meat on the plate, it went to Grandpa. My grandfather worked long hours, was distant, often disengaged, and the few times that he did interact with his children, with my dad's case, he shared with me instances where it involved a garden hose. My dad went through elementary school into upper middle grades, got in trouble, tipped over a pop machine, spent some time in juvie, arrived at age 16 while still technically in the 8th grade. He dropped out of school and needed a purpose. In our hometown of Brookville, Indiana, down in the southeast corner of the state, 4 stoplights, there was a very devout Catholic couple named Billy and Edith Niedenthal. Billy took my dad under his wing, paid him 50 cents an hour to start learning how to repair automobiles, gave my dad structure, gave my dad a purpose, gave my dad faith. And all of that became his way of ushering my dad along. Dad worked for a while for Billy, then he worked at the Chevrolet dealership in town. He went on to get married. That's my mom there on the right. I'm the little bundle of joy being held there. And those are Grandma and Grandpa Thalheimer there on the left. I was born couple years after I was born, my dad built his own auto body shop, 4 bays, a paint dock. You can see there in the back of the picture on the left, that's the back of the garage, which was in our backyard. We lived in a double-wide trailer that backed up against that, so I played in the backyard between our house and the garage. And that's me helping Dad collect some stuff in the garage. Dad owned that business for all those years, raised me and my 2 brothers, my younger brother, I'm the oldest of 3, my younger brother Mike, in the middle, went on to become an IT specialist and now runs his own contracting business. And my baby brother Jason was an Indianapolis police officer and is now a detective with the Indianapolis Police Force. On the right is a scan of one of my most prized pieces of memorabilia from college. Any of you who in the old days would go to get an estimate on your car if you damaged it, you would get this paper estimate written out by hand, items listed down the left, charges, and then the total. My dad created his own stationery my freshman year when I went away to college and cut out a piece of that estimate sheet and sent me a letter. My dad was a man of few words. My dad never wrote. My dad hardly read. But he had a heart as big as all get out, as we used to say. And that letter is one of the most prized things because he was always trying, was always very conversational with me, always understood me, and even though we were as different as we could be, Dad was there for me. Dad could have gone so many different directions and gone so wrong in his life based on what he had been through. But because of Billy, and because of Edith, and because of an Uncle Bob that he had who also took care of him, my dad learned resilience. He learned persistence. He learned to do the right thing. And he became the absolute best father in the world. This is why the social and emotional work and the emphasis that we're putting on that to start this year is so absolutely critical. Last night I attended Coach Kurth's celebration of life. And there were a parade of players who got up during the course of that evening and shared how Coach Kurth had brought out the champion in them, had expected things of them, helped them see their futures, washed their clothes, took care of them, made sure that they knew how important they were and what their potential was. The beginning of this year is so absolutely critical for all of our kids, as it is every year. But this year it is particularly important that we get back into making those connections with students so that they can see that potential within themselves and rebound from the last 18 months where kids have been through goodness knows what. And for you as adults, some of you have been through goodness knows what. So for that reason, we want you to know that you're being supported. Our social and emotional task force has been working on this plan for this year so that we can help take care of you, so that your buckets are full to be able to take care of students. My request of you is to allow that bucket to be filled. Take advantage of those opportunities, listen, absorb what we're pouring into you, so that you can turn around and be somebody else's Billy, or you can be somebody else's Coach Kurth. Because it is only by you being the best that you can be, can we hope to have our students be the best that they can be. And 2.5 years ago, I stood on this stage and introduced myself into the buildings, and then when we had the kickoff for the 2019 school year, I stood here and said to all of you that I believe in you. Our processes of the professional learning communities and the things that we were doing are because I believe in you, and we as a district believe in you. And that is all the more true because you are here today. So again, from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you. Welcome back. Take care of yourselves and each other, if I can sound a little bit like Hill Street Blues. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. And at this moment, I want to hand you over to your featured speaker for today, who will help you all the more understand the importance that you have and the absolutely critical role that you play in our society. And again, thank you, and I am proud to be your superintendent. Have a great year. And at this point, I will hand you over to Dr. Adam Sines.
Thank you, Dr. Palmer. Appreciate it. Good morning. Everybody stand up. You've been sitting for a minute. Stand up. Let's stretch. Awesome. I have been teaching like this for many years, and I still get nervous. One thing I've found, my wife is an occupational therapist, and she talks about my sensory defensiveness, right? But one thing I've found that calms me is noise, of all things. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make about 5 seconds of noise. What we're going to do is I'm going to say, ready, set, go. And I just want you to cheer as loud as you can for 5 seconds. 5 seconds. That will help calm my nerves, and it'll serve another purpose. I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, so everybody get ready. Think about your favorite sports moment, your favorite team, when your child scored the winning goal or whatever it was, and we're going to channel that moment. So I'm going to say, ready, set. See, y'all are already getting excited. I can feel it. I can feel it. Okay, here we go. Lots of noise for 5 seconds. Ready, set, go. There you go. 2, 3, 4, 5. Awesome, awesome. I feel better. That was actually for you. You deserve a standing ovation because you made it through last year. Good job, everybody. Super proud of y'all. Do me a favor, before you sit down, give somebody a fist bump and say, welcome back. All right. Feeling the love in Elkhart this morning. Something happened to me, my friends. Something happened to me on Monday, August 25th, 2008. That was so significant for me. It literally changed the course of my career. That day, Monday, August 25th, 2008, was my first day ever in my life as a real, live substitute teacher. Now, since I'm a licensed psychologist, I know the best way to heal from a traumatic event like that is to talk about it. And there is so much I could tell you about what a train wreck that day was, but let me give you some of the lowlights. I was on my campus at 7 a.m. I knew the campus, they knew me. My kids actually, they were in a dual language program there. They went to it was their K-5 campus. This was an inner city Title I school. So they knew me, I knew them. I had done professional development for them. Walk in, day one, substitute teacher. I see the receptionist, and she said, good morning, Dr. Sines. I didn't know we have professional development today. I said, no, ma'am, we don't. I'm actually here to substitute teach. And I'm handing her my ID so she can swipe it and give me a name badge. And she said, really? I said, yes, ma'am, really? She said, well, whose class are you going to be in? I forgot the teacher's name, Miss Smith. I knew it was third grade. So third grade, Miss Smith. And so as she's handing me my ID and my name badge, she says, good luck with that. I said, oh my gosh, the haters are going to hate. But I am here to make a difference. I'm not going to buy into the negativity. Got to my classroom, 7:45, the kids showed up, and everything I knew went out the window. It was absolute chaos. So this was their first Monday back on campus. They were there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Had the weekend off. This was their first Monday to kick off the year. What I didn't know was that for whatever reason, the teacher had come in the weekend before and rearranged all the desks. So the kids come in and they're all confused and they're freaking out and they're thinking, man, on Friday all the desks were facing this way. Today's Monday and all the desks are facing this way. On Friday my teacher was a Caucasian female. Today I got this guy. They weren't even sure they were in the right room. Kids were screaming. One kid literally got up and started jumping across tables. Literally was jumping across tables. And I freaked out. Like when you jump into a cold swimming pool, like, I just couldn't breathe. So I started to have a panic attack, and I said, hold on. You got this, Adam. You're a school psychologist. Come on, man. So my first thought was behavior intervention. I need a behavior intervention. So what am I going to do? And then, ding, the light bulb goes off. Like my friend says, this ain't rocket surgery. Everybody knows if you've got a room of rowdy, inner-city third-grade kids, all you have to do to put the fear of God in them, you just write their name on the board, right? So that was going to be my tier 1 research-based intervention. I was going to write kids' names on the board, but I said, you know what, I'm a school psychologist, and I know that not everybody's going to respond to tier 1. So for those kids who do not have the fear of God put in them when I put their name on the board, do you know what tier 2 is going to be? Check mark, baby. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So this kid threw a book across the room. Son, what are you doing? You just threw a book across the room. Yes, you did. I saw you do it. You did too. I saw you. Look, I'm not going to stand here and argue. You did too. I saw you do it. All right? I'm done with you. What's your name? What's your name? I'm going to write it up here. What is your name? All right. Hey, your little friend over there, what's his name? What is his name? All right, what's your name, son? I'm going to write your name up here. I'm not messing around. And it was stupid stuff like that all morning long. It was a master's workshop in how not to lead a classroom. 12 hours after I stepped foot in that classroom, a bell rang. Finally, time for lunch. I said, are you kidding me? How is it only 11:15? So I'm trying to make this big dramatic point to the kids about how bad their behavior was and how disappointed the teacher was going to be. I said, you know what's really pathetic? I said, in 10 minutes, we're about to go to lunch. And I said, let me check. So I turn around, I start counting names. 28 of you are going to be stuck in here with me at recess. This little girl in the back of the classroom, she raised her hand. Sir, there are only 22 kids in this class. What's your name, little girl? Do you want a check mark? I'll give you one. I'm not messing around. So the bell rings. They go out to eat lunch, and I grab my bologna sandwich. I grab my venti Starbucks. I was a shell of a man, like just trudging down to the teacher's lounge. I get to the teacher's lounge. There's nobody there. I just sit down at the first table I can find, and the first teacher that walked in was actually my kid's kindergarten teacher. She was like this brilliant Jedi Knight kindergarten teacher, like an amazing woman, right? So she walked in, and she was kind of surprised to see me there. She wasn't expecting me, and it was just me and her, and she walks in, and she sees me sitting there at the table with my bologna sandwich and my venti Starbucks and PTSD written across my forehead, right? And it's this really weird minute, and she kind of awkwardly walks over, and in this really sweet kindergarten teacher kind of way, she put her hand on the desk, and she said, Dr. Sines, is there anything I can do to help you? And I looked at her, and I said, yes, ma'am, actually there is. I said, listen, I know you don't know me that well, but I'm going to ask you a question, and I just need you to give me an honest answer. She said, okay, I can do that. I said, great. I said, ma'am, where on this campus do y'all keep the red wine? And that's what she did. She laughed. Oh, Dr. Sines, you're so... I said, sister, I'm not joking. I need a drink. Where do you keep it? She wouldn't give it up. 2 seconds after I sat down with my bologna sandwich, another bell rang. It was time to go back to class. And I regressed. I mean, I was walking down the hallway like, man, dude, I have not cried in a public school since 1978, man. This sucks. I want to go home, So finally we make it through the afternoon, and, the last bell rings, and I'm done, right? So the kids are leaving, and sure enough, man, the last kid to leave that morning was the one that had been riding me the hardest all day long. Him and his little compadres back there in the corner, man, their goal was to break me down. His name was on the board. He had a check mark. He had a hashtag. He had an exclamation point. I think at one point I gave him a pentagram. I was just so done with this kid, right? It looked like his name and a blotted out profanity. So he's walking out the door, and right when he gets to the door, he stops and he looks at me, and he says, hey, Dr. Sines, you're pretty cool, man. You going to be my teacher again tomorrow? Dude, I looked that kid straight in the eye. I said, oh, dear God, I hope not. So he left, and then the teacher from across the hall came over to check on me. She'd been checking on me throughout the day to make sure I still had a pulse, So she walked over, and she said, Adam, how did it go today? And I said, you know what? I don't think it went that well. And she said, really? And I said, oh, yes, ma'am, really? She said, let me ask you some questions. She said, how many fights did you have to break up today? And I said, well, none. She said, all right. She said, how many kids did you have to chase across the railroad tracks today? I said, well, none. And she said, you had a great day. What are you talking about? So got home that afternoon, found my red wine, and then a couple of days later, that saying that a picture's worth 1,000 words, a couple of days later, I think it was my daughter that texted me this picture And I thought, oh my gosh, this picture captures my first day as a substitute teacher. I'm this guy. I'm this guy, and this is that third grade class squatting the collective rear end of their bad behavior on my skills. And you can see who's coming out on top, and it ain't me, my friends. So people that know me in College Station, Texas, that's where I'm from, they say, I don't get it, Adam, man. You've got 2 doctorate degrees. You've got Ivy League training. Why are you substitute teaching? And I'll tell you why I started substitute teaching. It really all started back in 2001. That was my first year as a school psychologist, and part of what I did was this thing called consultation. And that was, these are kids, we've tried everything, nothing's worked. So, Dr. Science, we need you to come in and give us recommendations. What do we need to do to be academically or behaviorally successful with these kids? So I would consult, and I would interview kids and parents and teachers and give tests, and then I would give recommendations. And when I would give my recommendations, that's when I would get what I call the look. And you didn't have to be Sigmund Freud to figure out what the look was saying, right? It was just sort of like, what, you know? And I just thought, that's weird, you know, because I'm giving these recommendations, but I'm not getting buy-in. Like, I can tell these teachers aren't down with it. So I thought, man, maybe it's just because I'm a first-year school psychologist, I don't know what I'm doing. In theory, this is what we're supposed to be doing. I don't get it. Into my second year, same thing. I give recommendations, I get the look. So the second year, I was working with this one teacher at the high school. And let's just say she was comfortable speaking her mind. I'll put it that way. And so I'm working with this teacher, and you know, so there's a student, we need help, what do we do? So I do my thing. We go to a staffing, we sit down at a table, I hand up my report. Okay, everybody, look at my recommendations on the last page, number 1, da-da-da-da, and I'm getting the look, right, from everybody. The teacher, the assistant principal, the counselor, looking at me like I'm an idiot. But this teacher was like, her eyes in particular, like she was burning a hole in my forehead, right? And I could feel this negative energy. And I thought, man, this is weird. I want to get out of here. So I did my recommendations, and I said, okay, that's all I got. And I stood up to leave. Well, everybody got up because I was it, right? And so we were going for the door, and everybody bottlenecked at the door, and I got stuck in the back of the pack. And this woman stayed sitting down, and she was just staring at me. So as soon as I put my hand on the doorknob, she said, Dr. Science, can I talk to you for a minute? And I was thinking, oh, crap, here we go. Okay. I said, yes, ma'am, how can I help you? And she said, I have a question for you. Have you ever taught before? And I don't know how, but I knew she was going to. I just knew she was going to ask me that. So I had my answer ready. I said, yes, ma'am. I've taught graduate statistics at Texas A&M University. Oh, son, wrong answer. No. She said, let me be more specific, Dr. Sai. Have you ever in your life taught K-12? I said, no, ma'am, I haven't. She stood up, she got her stuff, and she said, that's what I thought. Turned around and walked off. So my first thought was, what an incredibly bitter little lady you are. Oh, my gosh. Must suck to work with you. But I get to leave. Well, several days later, as I was reflecting back on that, you know, and I got over my wounded ego, I thought, you know what, Adam? Not only is that a fair question, that's an essential question for a guy like you who's going around telling teachers how to do their job. And I started wondering, like, what if I'm that ivory tower academic guy that, you know, everything in theory, but you have no clue what it's actually like to be in a classroom? So that's why I started substitute teaching, was because I wanted just a taste of what it's like to be in a classroom, and then eventually started coaching high school track and field. The first light bulb that went off for me after that very first day of substitute teaching was this. Hey, Adam, guess what, big guy? It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter where you got them from. It doesn't matter what you think you know about education. Unless you've actually done the job in a classroom, day in, day out, there is no way you will ever understand or appreciate how incredibly demanding that role is. It was a huge insight for me. It reminded me of a T-shirt I saw one time that said, those who can, teach, and those who can't, make laws for those who teach. Yep, I was that guy. So what happened was I was overwhelmed with a sense of admiration for men and women like you who do what you do in the classroom day in, day out. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, but y'all are killing it, doing an amazing job. Then you look at the pandemic. There is no other, in my opinion, no other professional labor force that could have adapted and done as well as the education system did, given what was handed to them. Just amazing, absolutely amazing. Then what happened was that feeling of admiration shifted to one of curiosity. And I got really curious, and I thought, man, how do you get good at that thing called being a classroom teacher, or really working with kids in education for that matter? So I started doing research in 2008, 2009, looking at what are the psychological variables that drive vocational satisfaction, and what are the spiritual or existential variables that drive vocational satisfaction. So I have a PhD in psychology, I'm a licensed psychologist, and I have a doctorate of ministry in pastoral counseling, ordained clergy. So I really started looking at that. I was really curious, mostly in the world of an educator. And basically, when I started my research, I found two things that drive that. Number one, if I'm going to do what I do well, no matter what I do, whether I'm an educator, psychologist, banker, plumber, lawyer, welder, mechanic, whatever I do, if I'm going to do it well, number one, and then number two, do it sustainably, like so I can stay in the game through the ups and downs, two things have to be true of me. Number one, I have to understand that what I'm doing, it's not just a job. A job is just a basic agreement to swap labor for a paycheck. I also have to understand that what I'm doing, it's not just a career. A career is just a job with advancement opportunities. But if I'm going to do what I do well and do it sustainably, there has to be some sense of calling for me. And that sense of that calling is about your why. Not what, not where, not when, not how, but why. Why are you actually showing up here and working with kids, you know? And Dr. Talmar talked about that. He talked about his why. That's calling. That's calling. It can involve religion, but it doesn't have to necessarily. So let me explain how the sense of calling plays out in education. Let me ask this. Are there any first-year teachers in the house? Raise your hand high if you're a first. Oh, give them a hand. Give them a hand. First-year teacher in the house. Yeah, baby. Welcome to the family. Suckers! Oh! You know how I can tell a first-year teacher on the first day of school? It's so obvious. Her hair is perfect. Her makeup is perfect. Her outfit is cute, and she's teaching kids like her hair's on fire. If you're lucky, first-year teacher, you will make it to the first week of October. You'll look at your watch and you'll say, good Lord, is it Thanksgiving yet? Thanksgiving rolls around, you sit down at the Thanksgiving table and you say these words, I can't figure out why. I can't stop eating. 5 days, 7 pounds later, you go back to your campus, you say, I got just enough juice in me to get me to winter break. Winter break rolls around. You get off work on Friday and you look back at Thanksgiving and you say, oh my gosh, I overate at Thanksgiving. I am not going to overeat again. I'm going to drink. First thing you do, open up a bottle of wine, sit down. Wait, did I say wine? Girlfriend, you are a first-year teacher with $60,000 worth of student loan debt. You can't afford a bottle of wine. You're going to sit down and twist the cap off of 40 of Mickey's. That's what you're going to do. You're going to sit down, Mickey's in a brown paper bag, remote control, box of tissues, and 2 weeks of the Lifetime Network. 2 weeks later, you awaken out of a drunken stupor. You show up to campus. You say, I got just enough juice in me to get me to spring break. By the time spring break rolls around, you look back and you say, I'm too tired to eat. I'm too tired to drink. All I want to do is sleep. I'm going to kick off my spring break with a 10-minute nap. You lay down for your 10-minute nap. Next thing you know, your alarm clock's going off. You're late for work 10 days later. You slept through spring break. You look in the mirror. You wake up in a panic and you say, hair, makeup, ain't nobody got time for that. No. Show up to work, man, you're wearing sweatpants and a pair of chanclas for crying out loud. You got just enough juice in you to get you through that date with destiny when your kids have to take a test in April, maybe May. By the time May rolls around, you're in full-blown zombie mode. You're not even speaking in complete sentences. You're just walking around like that. You got a little trickle of blood out of the corner of your mouth. What is that blood? That student. You tried everything. Nothing worked. I finally just ate him, man. I didn't know what else to do. The only thing that's going to snap you out of zombie mode is you're going to walk into the teacher's lounge sometime in May. You're going to look in your mailbox. You're going to see a piece of paper, and it's going to say Elkhart. It's going to have your name on it. And you're going to read it, and then you're going to rub your eyes, and you say, oh, my gosh, I can't believe it. Ha! They renewed my contract. I got a job. So year 2, you come back, and you're all excited, man, because you know the kids, you know your lesson plans, you know the curricula, you know the parents, the building, your colleague. You start rocking and rolling. Year 3, take on some responsibility. You know, maybe you're department chair. Maybe you start writing curricula. Well, right around year 4, year 5, When many folks bail in education, you have what I call the Dunkin' Donuts moment. The Dunkin' Donuts moment, back in my day, there was this old Dunkin' Donuts commercial, and this guy would wake up at some ungodly hour. I don't know if y'all remember that. What would he say? Oh, time to make the donuts. And it's just this idea like, oh, I don't want to do this today, man. I'm not feeling it, right? And I'll tell you, in Texas, when we have our Dunkin' Donuts moment in education, it will happen invariably the last week of January, first week of February. Temperature will plummet to 28 degrees Fahrenheit, which is apocalyptic by Texas standards. And we see that, man, and if you live south of I-20 in Dallas, man, you see that and you start praying in Jesus' holy name for a snow day. Make it happen, man. Like my mom says, aprenda la vela, man. You light a candle, you do whatever you have to do, right? So you go home and you start looking at that banner of schools that's getting canceled, and you say, oh, come on, Elkhart, in Jesus' name, make it happen. Indianapolis schools canceled, Chicago public schools canceled, but not Elkhart. Oh, no. The children. And you're thinking, what about my inner child, right? So there you go, and you don't want to be here, and you're not getting your snow day, and you show up to your campus, and stupid campus, stupid kids, stupid administrators, stupid parents, stupid education, and you're blah, 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 blah. That's it, I'm done. I'm going to get my real estate license, right? They can take this job and stick it up. Blah, blah, blah. In those Dunkin' Donuts moments, that's what I'm talking about. It's not just a job, it's a career, it's a calling. I say, man, I'm not feeling it. I don't want to be here. But I remember when I went into my truth-finding rubric, whatever that is, major world religion, philosophical belief system, rational empiricism, secular humanism, whatever vehicle you enter into to find truth, you entered into that vehicle with these two questions: who am I and why am I on this planet? And calling in education is your why involves shaping the next generation. So you can bail and you can go do something else, but you stop and you say, oh, but wait, if I'm a realtor, those kids aren't going to be in the houses that I'm going to be showing. If I go climb a ladder in corporate America, those kids aren't going to be in corporate America. They're going to be in those buildings. And this is what satisfies my soul. So that's the first thing. If I'm going to do what I do well and do it sustainably, it can't just be a job. It can't just be a career. There has to be some sense of calling. That's the first thing. Second thing is this: I don't find satisfaction in my calling. I don't find satisfaction in my calling. Instead, I find satisfaction in the totality of my life, and I take satisfaction to my calling. So here's what I mean by that. Another way to say this, that I'm not looking to my calling to satisfy me, but I'm finding satisfaction in the totality of my life, is to say that I'm practicing self-care. So we could think of our lives as a wheel. Each spoke represents a major area. That's me living my A game. That's me being a good steward of my spirit, my body, my occupation, my emotions, and my finances. When I live my A game, when I take care of myself, I'm more resilient to stress, meaning I can tolerate more and more stress. But when I don't take care of myself, my wheel doesn't even look like a wheel anymore. It looks like that red thing. And that's my C- game. Frankly, most of us live that life for at least the last 12 months. We feel worn out. We feel tired. We feel depleted. We feel taken for granted at some level, and all that's understandable. But the goal is to say, this is where I'm at. What do I need to do to grow well-being? How can I start nurturing and loving myself and getting myself back on my game? It's like my iPhone. Once it gets to the red 20%, that means you better plug me in, because if I die, I'm not going to be of any use to anyone. And so we learn to recognize that check engine light, as it were, in our lives. It says, you need to pull over and look under the hood, love yourself well, nurture yourself so that you can be charged up. And that's what makes excellence sustainable, is that it's this process of being filled up and then poured out, and filled up and then poured out. And once you learn to recognize that rhythm and honor that rhythm, which is the education academic calendar plays very well to that pattern. My wife is an occupational therapist. I'm a school psychologist. We've been school people for 20 plus years, and we learned early on, that's the rhythm. And we learned to use summers to fill ourselves up. And then, we sort of pour ourselves out, and then we have a little window of break in November, then one in December. We fill ourselves back up, and it's just a matter of being filled up and poured out, filled up and poured out. That's what makes it sustainable. That's what keeps us from burning out. And out of those two, out of that research, I ended up writing my book, The Power of a Teacher. If I'm an educator, how do I do those two things? Number one, how do I link what I do deeply and who I believe I am here on this planet with what I do on a day-to-day basis. So how do I make a link between calling and daily performance? And then number 2, how do I take care of myself? How do I make sure that I'm practicing self-care, that I'm nurturing and loving myself very, very well? Because one of the most loving things we can do for people depending on us is to offer them the best version of ourselves. That's one of the most loving things we can do. It's not narcissistic self-absorption. It's an act of love to people that you're serving. Number 1. And then number 2, I always argue that one of the most effective, I would say, in my opinion, the most effective Tier 1 intervention for every kid, every student in this corporation, whether it's a PPCD student, 3-year-old, 18 plus, male, female, black, brown, white, gifted, talented, slow learner, special ed, general ed, gay, straight, I don't care who the kid is, one of the most effective, if not the most effective Tier 1 intervention is a healthy adult. A healthy adult is the most effective intervention. So out of that research, again, I wrote the book, The Power of a Teacher. So I have 2 goals in my time with you this morning for this session and for the next one that I'll do. Number 1, I want to encourage you, and number 2, I want to equip you. The equipping will happen later this morning, and then tomorrow we'll be working on our team, the rest of the team will be here tonight, and we'll be working with campuses to equip you. We're super, super excited about that. But really what I want to do first of all is just encourage you. I just want to encourage you. I want you to be excited and ready to start off the school year. I could talk through data and research about self-care and best practice and all of that, but instead I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to share a couple of case studies with you. So let's look at these 2 kids here. The boy on the left is a 6th grader. His name is Lou. The girl on the right is a 4th grader. Her name is Maya. And as I talk about these 2 kids, I'm going to ask 2 questions. Number 1, do you care about me? And number 2 is, can I make my own rules? There is so much psychology packed into those 2 questions, but let me just break it down this way and say, anytime you have a leader and a follower, a designated leader and a designated follower, for the follower, following is about surrendering control. So listen, leader, teacher, coach, boss, parent, if you're going to lead me, I have to surrender control to you to let you lead. And surrendering control can be an extremely scary prospect for some kids, especially kids that come from trauma. So listen, leader, before I give you this precious jewel called control of my life, I need to know 2 things about you. Number 1, do you care about me? Why would I ever surrender control to anyone that I didn't think cared about me? Number 1. And number 2, even after I know that you care about me and I surrender control and you start leading me, can I make the rules or are you going to make the rules? Are you strong enough and competent enough to get me where you say you want to take me? Or can I rise up and throw you off your game? The first question is about love, and the second question is about respect. And where you have no love and where you have no respect, you have no surrender of control. And that's just a basic premise in psychology. So I'm going to be coming back to these 2 questions. Let's talk about this first kid. 6th grader, Latino male. He comes from a low socioeconomic home, single parent. He's skipping school. He's got problems with the law. He's got mental illness. He's using street drugs to self-medicate. Coming soon to a campus or classroom near you, this kid. Maybe he hasn't stood in a lunch line since spring break of last year, 2 years ago, whenever it was. He doesn't remember anything. And so this student's going to come onto the campus, and when you look at any one of those demographic variables, just being Latino means educationally, his academic achievement is going to be less than, statistically speaking. Coming from a low socioeconomic home means, educationally speaking and statistically speaking, less than. When you stack all of this together in one kid, and our job is to grow and develop this student, we've got our work cut out for us. This is going to be an uphill walk. And again, coming soon to a campus near you, and the challenge is that, I'll talk about this more later, but most of the tools we have at our disposal to try to increase motivation don't work. Sticks and carrots, behavioral psychology, it's not going to be effective. We don't have a stick that's big enough or strong enough to scare this kid into compliance. We don't have a carrot that's big enough or sweet enough to entice him into high performance. And that can be really frustrating. And so you've got 1 or 2 or 7 or 20 of these kids in your classroom. It's overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming, and I get that. Well, this student is not in 6th grade anymore. Of all things, this little stinker grew up, and he became a licensed psychologist, and that's what he looks like today. Oh, yeah. I was that kid. Well, thank you. So what I want to do to encourage you is I'm going to share my story with you. We'll pick up my story on the first day of 6th grade. The setting is the early 1980s. The location is the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, the very southern tip of Texas, about 20 miles from the border of Mexico. Mostly Latino, mostly Spanish-speaking. There are 3,143 counties in the United States. This was the 5th poorest per capita. That's where I grew up. I remember on the first day of 6th grade walking up to school and seeing a teacher standing at the front door. And he was standing there with his arms crossed, and he had a piece of wood in his hand. And I knew who he was. His last name started with T, and we called him Mr. T because he was like Mr. T from the A-Team. I pity the fool. Big bad dude, right, Mr. T? The fact that he was Caucasian made it even richer for us to call him Mr. T. 2 things I knew about Mr. T, even though I'd never had him. Number one, you didn't make the rules with Mr. T. With Mr. T, they were his rules. And no matter who you were, if you broke them, you were going to get a consequence. I knew that. Second thing I knew about Mr. T was he didn't care about us. What he cared about was compliance. You just do what I said to do because I'm the adult and you're not. That's what he cared about. I never had him, but I knew that about him. I didn't like him. Walking up to school, he sees me, I see him, we make eye contact, and I'm thinking, I don't want to do this with you, not on day one. So I start walking to the back of the school. He follows me, gets up into my space, puts out his hand. He said, "Stop right there, young man." He said, "Listen, I know who you are. I know who you are. Your name is Lou Sines. I know everything about you. Talk to your kids, your teachers from last year. I know you gave them a run for the money. I know you're skipping school. I know you got problems with the law. I know that you're using drugs. I know your older brother's about to drop out of high school. I know your dad's not around. I know your mom's not invested. I know everything about you. So don't even step onto my campus, into my classroom, and act like you're all that, because I already know who you are. The jig is up." He said, "But I want you to understand one thing. I'll have you in line by the end of the school year. My goal this year is to have you in line. Your other teachers may have put up with it, but I'm not." And then he said, "In fact, young man, if you so much as even speak a word of Spanish in my classroom, me and you and this big brown paddle that I have right here, we're going to march down to the office, and we're going to take care of business. I'm not going to put up with it." And then he leaned over and he pointed his finger in my face and he said, "Do you understand me, young man?" I knew right away he meant business because he was Mr. T. So I leaned back into his face and I said, "Sí entiendo, pendejo." Natalie, we've got Spanish speakers up here. Oh my gosh. For those of you who didn't understand that, I will translate that. That means, yes, I understand perfectly. You might want to Google that before you roll that into your conversational Spanish. Fair warning. No, hombre, vámonos, man. It was a short honeymoon, right? He said if I spoke Spanish, there would be consequences. They were his rules. I broke them. Bam, bam, bam. Off we went, day one. It was a short honeymoon. What happened was we got locked into a pattern. Every day, that's all we did. To the office, from the office. If I had had an IEP, goal 1 would have been Lou will go to the office. I mean, that's all I did. And Mr. T always had these one-liners for me as we're walking down to the office. "Couldn't make it through a single day, could you, Lou? You know, Lou, it must be your job to make my job help." And it wasn't just at school. It was at home, too. My mom was a single-parent mom trying to do the right thing, but out of her league. And every day I got home, I would hear from my mom, "Ay, mijito, what have you done today? Ay, mijito, pues quién te manda? You know, why do you do these things?" It was a beatdown. 3 things happened that year that made my life particularly difficult. The first, it's a long story, but 2 of my friends went to go buy some drugs. There was a shootout. My friends were murdered. Very next day, there I was back on my campus. To the office, from the office, couldn't make it through a single day. Lou. Second thing that happened, a little bit later, that was related to the first thing. A group of young men from a rival broke into my home. They restrained me and they sexually assaulted my cousin. For a number of reasons, I couldn't talk about it. But the very next day, there I was back on my campus. To the office, from the office. Must be your job to make my job hell, Lou. Well, the third thing that happened is that I was arrested for possession. And I will never forget the look on my mom's face when she came into juvenile that time to pick me up. And I knew as soon as I saw her, she was done. The anger in her face. And the first words out of her mouth were, "Mijito, what are you doing here?" And it wasn't a question of action. I'm sitting in this chair with these handcuffs digging into my wrist. That's not what she was asking. It was a question of identity. And I remember thinking, even back then, like, what a stupid question to ask. Are you kidding? What am I doing here? I know who I am. I'm Lou Sines. It's my job to make your life hell. I'm never going to learn. I can't make it through a single day. These are messages I got growing up. I know who I am. Where else would I be? Well, Child Protective Services was never involved with my family, but my mom could read the writing on the wall. She knew I had an older brother that was about to drop out, and things didn't look good for me. So she voluntarily relinquished parental rights. And I went from living in South Texas to living with a family several hundred miles away in what was then a small rice farming town out in the sticks outside of Houston called Katy, Texas. And it was culture shock. I grew up in a place that was mostly Latino. I was the token brown boy. Nobody spoke Spanish. Nobody listened to my music. Nobody dressed the way I dressed. I was different. But I said, I'm good, because all I know is none of these teachers know any of those teachers back home. None of these kids know any of those kids back home. And, man, I couldn't score a joint to save my life. And Lord knows I tried, man. But there was no dope in the rice paddy. So I actually did pretty well at Katy Junior High and Katy High School. But by my senior year, my depression kicked back in. Because the family that I live with, they said, listen, man, we love you, but you need to understand, when you're 18 and you graduate, you're on your own. It's up to you. And I was terrified because I knew that, no. Once you take this structure away from me, I'm done. I couldn't have articulated it back then, but I knew that the adults in my life were functioning as my frontal lobe. They were ordering my life. They were making sense of my life. It wasn't this. It was them. And I knew that once it was gone, I was done. And back then, you know, I never told anybody about my past or my trauma, because back then you didn't talk. Only now are we beginning to talk about mental illness and the reality of that. But back then there was none of that. So I just thought you just forget the past and move on, but it doesn't work that way. So I graduated from Katy High School, and that's when the bottom fell out. I ended up in San Antonio. I was working as a dishwasher at a fast food restaurant, and I didn't own much. I had a sleeping bag, a pillow. I had a suitcase with some clothes. I was living in this shack behind a house. It was a tiny room with a shower and a toilet. And I had a box of journals, and that box of journals was my prized possession because I had learned all the way back in 6th grade that between the covers of a journal really was my only safe place in the world. That was the only place I could express what I was thinking and feeling without fear. So I remember one morning, about 3 a.m., getting off work. I'd closed a restaurant, and I was really, really depressed. I was just in one of my darkest moments. And I got home from work, and I thought, I just need to write. I need to get some feelings out, you know. So I laid down, 3 in the morning, pulled out my sleeping bag and my pillow, and pulled out my journal. Well, when I looked in my journal box, I saw some paper way down in there, and I wasn't sure what it was. So I pulled it out. I was blown away at what I found. They were letters that had been written to me by 2 of my teachers my senior year at Katy High School, and I had completely forgotten about this. But then when I read them, I thought, I remember. It was literally the last day of my senior year at Katy High School. As I was walking out of their classroom, each of these 2 teachers said, here, this is for you. We want you to read it. You know, back then I was 18, like, I just want to get out of here. I got the letter, stuck it in my backpack. Well, evidently it had ended up in my journal box. This is part of what one of those letters said. You're extremely talented and intelligent, but most importantly, you have a good heart. I know you will use your talents to help your fellow man, and that's the most satisfying life a person can have. It said some other things, but that's really what jumped out. Put that away, pulled out the second letter. This is part of what that letter said. Don't quit writing, especially in your journal. Someday it may be the basis for your book. You have insight, sensitivity, intelligence, maturity. Beyond your tender years, keep being you. You're a special person. And these words haunted me. They absolutely destroyed me, because I remember thinking, like, nope, I know who I am. I'm Lou Sines. I'm a 19-year-old version of that 6th grade kid that's never going to make it through a single day, whose job it is to make your life hell, who's never going to learn. I'm working as a dishwasher. I'm living in a shack. You know, I've got no family. I've got no money. I've got no hope. I've got no future. But here's what I do have. Panic attacks, racing thoughts, sleep disturbances, fear of being in public, feelings of hopelessness about the future, uncontrollable crying spells, and a big bag of dope that, if I'm lucky, will get me through the day. That's what I do have. I know who I am. But here were these 2 women for whom I had tremendous respect that were disagreeing with me. And because of who they were, not just as teachers, as human beings, I couldn't blow them off, because I knew they wouldn't have written those words if they didn't absolutely believe it. So back and forth I went, like, who's right about me? I think I know who I am, but here are these 2 teachers saying something different. So finally I said, here's the deal. I'm going to create a test that I know I'm going to fail. And when I fail that test, that's all the proof I need to go back and live my miserable life. Here's the test. I'm going to try to get into college. I have no idea how you do that. Neither of my parents went to college. I'm not college material. Brown kids where I grew up didn't go to college. I don't have any money. I can never do it. But let me just try and fail. And then in my own mind, I could just put this thing to rest and say, you know what, Miss McRoberts, Miss Exley, that was really sweet, but you were wrong. Got on a bus, took the bus to UTSA, the University of Texas at San Antonio. Stepped off the bus pulled away. My very first experience on a college campus was a panic attack. My mind was racing. You don't belong here. You're out of your league. You're not college material. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not like the rest of these kids. You're never going to make it. You're going to fail. You don't have any money. My heart was racing. And I just went up to the first kid I saw with a backpack. I said, "Are you a student?" "Yep." "How do you get in? How did you even do this?" He showed me the right people. I went to the right building and went through a long process. So then at the end of the day, I got the bus and went back to work. I applied. I'm done, That was like in April. Well, in August, and this was like a hot Texas August, I was back in the kitchen scrubbing dishes, and the manager came back into the kitchen. He said, "Hey, you've got a letter from UTSA." And I said, "What's UTSA?" I didn't even know what it was. He said, "The University of Texas at San Antonio." I said, "Oh," and then I remember, that's right, I applied. So then I thought, oh, this is the flush letter. This is where you open it up. "Dear Mr. Sines, we sincerely regret to inform you," right? Well, I opened it up, and it said, "Congratulations, you've been admitted." Couldn't believe it. I thought, no, man, they must have made a mistake, So I went back to the campus, and I said, "Man, I think y'all made a mistake. Like, is there another Adam Sines that y'all let in, or like, what's the deal?" "Nope, that's you." First class I had to take was a remedial English, and I thought, that's great, because if I have any hope of passing a college course, it's got to be English. That was my favorite subject in high school. At the end of that semester, not only did I pass the course, I made an A, and I couldn't believe it. And I was thinking, I think I just earned my first college credit. So for the first time in my life, I gave myself permission not to believe Miss McRoberts or Miss Exley, but just to crack open the door to the idea, the possibility that maybe they were right. Maybe they could see something in you that you couldn't even see in yourself, on the one hand. On the other hand, this could have been a clerical error for all I know. I should probably take another course. So I took another one that spring, and I passed it. Just kept going back a little at a time, putting myself through school. Every semester thinking, no, seriously, this is when I fail out. No, now I'm a junior, this is when I fail out. No, I'm a senior, now I'm going to fail out. Just before I turned 27 years old, I graduated with my undergraduate degree in English. Never thought I was going to get a college degree. Never thought I was college material. But for the first time in my life, I gave myself permission to believe Miss McRoberts and Miss Exley. I said, you know what? They were right. You were the one that was wrong. They could see something in you that you couldn't even see in yourself. And then I just, in my own heart, I said, man, I'm done being Lou. I'm done being that kid whose job it is to make your life hell, who's never going to learn, who can't make it through a single day. And then just psychologically, as a way to give myself permission to be somebody else, I said, I'm going to start going by my first name. My name is Adam Lewis Sines, and I've always been Lou. I'm done being Lou. I'm going to be Adam. Maybe Adam can live into this life that those teachers saw in him so many years ago. Started my master's in counseling, finally had a job, and finally had a little bit of money, finally got treatment, finally got therapy, finally got medication, finally dealt with my trauma, finally dealt with my mood disorder, my anxiety disorder. And then I started realizing, they were right, this is it, you can do this. Finished my master's, applied to Texas A&M for a PhD in psychology. The whole thing came full circle in March of 2001. I remember I was sitting in Logan Airport in Boston, waiting for my flight to fly back to College Station to defend my dissertation. I was going to graduate in May. I was finishing my rotations at Harvard Medical School. And I was going to graduate in May, and I had applied to postdocs at Brown, Yale, and Columbia. And Brown was the top choice because of the clinical work. Sitting in Logan, waiting for my flight, my cell phone rang. I said, hello, this is Adam. A voice on the other end said, Adam, hey, this is Dr. Jay Reeve at Brown Medical School. Listen, we got your paperwork. We really enjoyed our interview with you. I'm calling to offer you a faculty appointment here at Brown to finish your postdoc. We'd love you to join. And I was thrilled. Right? I mean, this is my top choice. And so he's telling me about the clinical work and the research and all that. Well, as he's talking, I had an incoming phone call, and I didn't recognize the area code. And I said, Dr. Reeve, I'm so sorry to ask, but do you mind if I put you on hold? I've got a call coming in. I think I need to get it. I said, sure. So I click over. I said, hello, this is Adam. Voice on the other end said, Adam, this is Dr. Chuck Sanislow at Yale Medical School. Listen, we got your paperwork. We really enjoyed our interview with you. Calling to offer you a faculty appointment here at Yale. We'd love you to join. I said, dude, I got Brown on the other line. Let me call you back. Click. Switched over, took the position at Brown. And then after I hung up, it was sort of that like mouth agape, like, jaw on the floor moment. Like, did I just hang up on Yale because I had Brown on the other line, you know? And that's when it hit me. Adam, you can write your own ticket. You're qualified to do what you love to do, which is practice psychology at any hospital, any university, any school district in the country. And you're bilingual, for crying out loud. So you just decide where you want to go, and I bet you they'll make a place for you. And I think for anyone to have a moment where you realize your professional skill set is that valued, it's a landmark moment. But when you grow up doing without and you have that moment, it's surreal. It's just surreal. And I knew in that moment, man, I wouldn't have these opportunities right now if I didn't have a PhD in psychology. Never would have had the courage to apply for a PhD if I hadn't finished my master's. Never could have applied for a master's if I hadn't finished my undergrad. And I'm here to tell you, man, I know that I never would have stepped out to be anything more than that mistaken version of who I thought I was, had men and women just like you not spoken truth into my life. And I say this all the time, I'm deeply grateful for the opportunities that my education has afforded me. But education did not change my life. Educators did. It was men and women just like you that 40 years ago could have said, man, they don't pay me enough to put up with a punk like that. And they would have been exactly right. They didn't get paid enough to put up with a punk like me. But by God's grace, man, those women said, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And those women did everything in their power to make sure I had everything I needed to be successful. And I'm deeply, deeply indebted to them. If you ever happen to be in Katy, Texas for any reason, and you're driving down Westheimer Parkway, you're going to see that building, and that's Joe Ella Exley Elementary. And if you ever happen to be driving down Franz Road in Katy, Texas, you're going to see that building, and that's Polly McRoberts Elementary. So proud of Katy for honoring those women. Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to tell you about the second student here, and then I'll be done for this session. This was Maya Chavez. And when I look at that picture of Maya, her smile does not convince me. And when I think about who this child was when that picture was taken, I think, what does this kid have to smile about? She had been in the custody of protective services for 2 years already in her young life. She had experienced things that no human being should ever have to experience, let alone a little girl. And we sit her down in front of a camera and tell her to say cheese. What's there to smile about? Well, what happens with kids that grow up in chaotic families, whether protective services is involved or not, is they develop a base layer of emotion. And that first primal emotion for them is anxiety / fear / stress. It's all the same thing. Because they never know from moment to moment what's going to happen. And I'm not talking about from year to year. I'm talking about, is this the moment when somebody's going to walk into my room and touch me? Nope. Is this the moment when the bullets are going to come flying through the window? Nope. Is this the moment when somebody's going to knock on the door and say, ma'am, we're here to take your kids away? Nope. Well, now, is this the moment when somebody walks into my room and touches me? And when you live in that kind of high-stakes unpredictability, you live in fight or flight. Your sympathetic nervous system stays activated. It's called hyperarousal, hypervigilance, and you're always on guard. Well, what street-smart kids figure out real quick when they're afraid and they go to fight or flight, flight is never the right answer. You always fight. It's better to fight and lose than it is to run. So what happens neurochemically is that their hardwiring gets shifted and they go straight from fear to anger and aggression because they learn to use anger and aggression to establish dominance. And that's their coping mechanism. That's how they feel safe. If I can dominate you, I feel safe. Well, what happens is that if parents aren't doing what they need to be doing to keep kids safe, protective services will get involved and will remove the child. And we, in our adult minds, think, good, at least they're in a safe place. Sort of. But what that kid is thinking is that family may have been crazy, but they were my crazy, and I don't have them anymore. So then you add to that base layer of emotion, the anxiety, a second layer of emotion, and that's sadness and grieving, because they're grieving the loss of their biological family. And what those kids know about that building called school and the adults in that building called school is that building and those adults are the safest, most predictable part of their world. And if they're going to act out those feelings of anger, of anxiety, of fear, of sadness, of depression, of loss, they know that building and those adults are the safest place to do it. And while that makes our calling extremely difficult at times in schools, in some ways it's a badge of honor when kids are acting out because they're saying, you're safe, I can get this out with you. Well, what happens statistically speaking is that if a child has not been adopted by the time they're 10, 11, 12 years old, the likelihood that they will ever be adopted, it drops dramatically. And those kids know it. So then if they haven't been adopted by the time they're about in middle school, you add a third layer of emotion, and that's hopelessness. Because they know I'm stuck in the system. The adoption ship sailed, and I wasn't on it. And associated with those feelings of hopelessness are other feelings. I feel unlovable. I'm damaged goods. Nobody wants me. I'm a reject. I'm a loser. Then, by now, they're pre-adolescent or adolescent, and they start acting out not just where it's safe in schools. They start acting out where it's not safe, out in the street. So you have a history of interaction with the legal system, ankle monitors, probation officers, all of that nonsense. And if you ever have a family that's even thinking about adopting a child in this scenario, that state caseworker will sit that family down at a table and pull out stacks and stacks of paperwork that family will have to read through because, office referrals, a list of inpatient treatment, a list of outpatient treatment, psychological evaluations, diagnoses, medication, probation officer notes, all of that, because the state is saying this is not going to be a bait and switch. If you're going to adopt a child with special needs, you need to know exactly what you're signing up for. And who's going to want to sign up for that, for crying out loud? Well, in March of 2010, Maya stood in front of Judge Cindy Miller in Bryan, Texas. Judge Miller slammed her gavel and changed Maya's life forever. Like many kids in her scenario, she's in the legal system. But for Maya, the circumstances were a little bit different. A family read the file, and they said, we know exactly what we're signing up for. And on that day in March of 2010, Judge Miller slammed her gavel, changed her life forever, and made it official. And that was the day that my wife and I adopted Maya, and Maya Chavez became Maya Signs. And there we are with our biological children and the judge on the adoption day. That was such a great, great day in our family's life. Thank you. That was on a Tuesday. That very next Saturday, Maya and I had our very first daddy-daughter dance. So there we are getting ready for the daddy-daughter dance. And I remember I said to her, all right, sweet girl, you've got a new dress, you've got new shoes, you are beautiful. I said, before we go to the dance, I'm going to take you out to eat dinner anywhere that you want to go. And man, her little eyes lit. Are you kidding me? Anywhere? I said, anywhere you want to go, you name it. Steak, seafood, lobster, I don't care. Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A. So we had a chicken sandwich and waffle fries in our formal wear. It was the bomb. And I remember all day thinking, she'd only been with us for about 6 months, and I remember all day thinking, like, man, when we get to the dance, I just really want to have a point of connection with her, really want to engage with her. So I remember we had dinner, we got to the dance, we got some punch, we sat down at the table, and we were just sitting there. It was kind of quiet, and I said, Maya, can I hold your hand for a sec? And she said, yeah, sure. And I remember I reached over and I held her hand. I took this little picture. I said, sweet girl, let's talk for a minute. There are 2 things we need to talk about. Number 1, you have a job. Number 2, I have a job. Let's talk about your job. Your job is to follow the rules. There's not a comma at the end of that statement. There's not a question mark at the end of that statement. There's a period. You don't make the rules. Mom and I do. You're 10. And my hope is that by the time you're 18, you've earned enough of my trust that you'll make your own rules. But for right now, you're 10. You haven't earned any of my trust, and you don't make any of the rules. Mom and I do. Your job is to follow them. Do you understand that? She said, yes, sir. I said, that's awesome. That's the first thing. Number 2, let's talk about my job. I have a job. Do you know what my job is? And she said, oh, yes, sir. Your job is to make sure that I follow the rules. And I smiled at her, and I said, oh, no, sweet girl. I said, listen, I want you to look at my eyes when I tell you this, because this is one of the most important things I will ever say to you. And I said, sweetheart, my job is to lay my life down for you. My job is to love you, to protect you, to provide for you, to comfort you, to nurture you, to encourage you. I said, sweetheart, you don't understand this about yourself yet. But you're the most precious thing on the planet. There is no pile of gold anywhere more valuable than you. Not even in the same category. And my job is to lay my life down for you so that you will understand your value. Because once you understand your value, you will live as though your choices matter. You will understand you were not a mistake. Understand that just like me, you have a calling, you have a purpose, you have a destiny. I said, sweetheart, listen, man, I get something. You're going to push us and you're going to test us. Do they really, really mean it when they say they make the rules and I don't? Do they really, really mean it when they say they love me? And I said, man, I'm not going to like that. It's going to frustrate me. It's going to make me mad. But I want you to understand one thing right now. There is no thing you can ever do that will ever separate you from my love for you. I'm not going anywhere. I will always be your father, and you will always be my daughter. I said, my trust, I don't give that away. You have to earn it. But my love is a gift. All you have to do is receive it. And then I remember in a moment of incredible insight, she looked at me, and she said, Dad, I don't think I've ever been loved that way before. And I smiled, and I said, oh, sweet girl, believe it or not, I know exactly how you feel. I said, let me tell you a story about a kid I used to know. His name was Lou. And I shared my story with her, I've sort of shared it with you. And as I shared my story with her, this peace sort of came over her. Because I think in that moment, she started crack open the door to the possibility that maybe these people will be safe for me. And it was a powerful, powerful moment in our relationship. And the reason I share my daughter as a case study is just to underscore the generational power. You know, Dr. Thalmar just illustrated generational power. When I think about the men and women that invested in me, when quite frankly I was not the best version of myself, you know, so many years ago, how do I look at a girl like this and not bring her into my life? That's the generational power that we have. My wife and I were married in 1995. We're celebrating our 26th wedding anniversary next month. This is what our kids look like in 2002. There's my daughter Alisa on the left. There's Isaiah in the middle. There's Andrew on the right. This is what they look like in 2008. There's Isaiah on the left. There's Alisa in the middle and Andrew on the right. This is what my kids look like in 2010. There's Alisa on top, Isaiah on top. There's Andrew on the bottom. There's my daughter Maya. This was around 2015. That was on the campus at Texas A&M. And this was last Thanksgiving. And we are really, really blessed. So here's what I want to do. I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to end with this. Everybody close your eyes. And there are kids that are wearing you out, that wore you out last year, and they're going to wear you out very, very quickly. And I get it. You know, I don't blame you or judge you for that. I get it. I get it. Keep your eyes closed, and let me just speak to you on behalf of those students and all students. Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. Thank you for coming to work today. I don't know where I'll end up when I'm 19. I may be earning academic honors at an Ivy League university. I may be serving my country in the military. I may be an employed high school graduate. I may be in jail. I may not even make it to 19. Only God knows. But regardless of where I might be and what I might be doing at 19, you need to know that our interaction shapes me. You need to know that even though this building may sometimes seem like a zoo to you in some very important ways, this place can be the safest place on the planet for me. You need to know that when you teach me, even at your worst, you have the potential to be a better influence on me than much of what and who I experience on this campus. You need to know that when you love me, even at your worst, you have the potential to love me more sincerely and effectively than many people I'm around away from this campus. The state will give me a test once a year that may measure some of what you've taught me, but I guarantee you life gives me a test every day that measures all of what you've taught me. So thank you for teaching me, especially in those moments when every part of my being is communicating that I don't want to be taught by you. And thank you for loving me, especially in those moments when every part of my being is communicating that I don't want to be loved by you. Bottom line, I need you. I need to know that you care about me. I need to know that I don't make the rules. And I may never be fortunate enough to appreciate that or even realize that, but I hope you're courageous enough never to forget it. So thank you for coming to work today, sir. Thank you for coming to work today, ma'am. Please take care of yourself. Please be well. And please come back tomorrow. You went into education to make a difference, and I'm here to tell you, man, my life is living proof that you were not wrong. My life is living proof that what you do matters. And I would argue that in a year like what we just went through, what you do matters more than ever. More than ever. It's harder than it's ever been, and it's more consequential than it's ever been. Super excited. Be encouraged. Be encouraged. Know that what you do makes a difference. We also want to equip you. We want to give you a framework so that you can know yourself and regulate yourself and keep yourself in the sweet spot. As things are good, as things are challenging, whatever it might be. All of that is adult SEL. So I'll talk more about that in my next session. And then with some of the campus, we'll be working in depth tomorrow. Thank you so much. And I'm going to end with this. By God's grace, I know who I am today. My name is Adam Lewis Sines, and I'm here today because my life was impacted by the power of a teacher, men and women just like you. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sines. Thank you. Okay, we are going to be taking a break, but if you have to take a break, then do. Up next, we're going to, because we believe that mental health is a strength in the Elkhart schools, and I like to say, Dr. Sines, we have a Dr. T too. Although he doesn't stand in the hallways gruffly like that, he's very intuitive, very intelligent, analytical, and he is determined to bring people together as their best self. How do we do that? We do that through an employee assistance program and programs that focus on you and keeping you mentally healthy and just mentally vibrant. So up next, we'll be using New Avenue Employee Assistance Program, and Nancy Pietrangeli, she told me to call her Nancy P, but I don't want to be lazy. Pietrangeli will come up and explain that, the program to you and how you can benefit from such program.
As Carrie, Dr. Thalheimer, and Dr. Saint said this morning, you've all faced a lot of difficulties and challenges over the past year, and you've got more to come this year. And they stress the importance of maintaining your health and well-being, and at the same time, being able to cope with the situations that you have to deal with day in and day out. They stress the importance of having a support system, and one of the supports that the Elkhart Community Schools is providing for you this year is an employee assistance program through New Avenues. New Avenues EAP offers a variety of services, short-term counseling for employees and your family members, financial counseling, focus on success management referral program for workplace issues. What that is if an employee is having performance issues, attendance problems, something that's impacting their work, a supervisor or an administrator or human resources may refer them to the EAP for counseling. It is not a punishment. It is meant as a help to get them back on track before they start to have serious issues with their job. We also have critical incident response. Should you have a death, an injury, or some other trauma take place at the school or with a student or a teacher, New Avenues has trained trauma counselors who would come in, work with you, and provide support. Conflict mediation. We often have situations where two people or an employee and a supervisor, or even sometimes two departments, have a conflict. There are some issues they can't get along. We have trained mediators who will come in and help you work through those issues. We offer a variety of training programs, stress management, harassment, violence in the workplace, a variety of programs on any number of topics that we could come in at the request of Elkhart Community Schools and provide these training programs for you. Work-Life Resources Program, it's an online database with a number of resources which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And then a communication program with brochures, wallet cards, and benefit sheets that explain in more detail what is involved in the program. So what do we go to an EAP for? Well, normal people, normal concerns. People think, well, going to counseling, I'm not crazy, I don't need that. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with getting some assistance, maybe some coaching. Every one of us at some point in our lives is going to deal with one of these problems. And if not us, we may have a family member, a loved one, or a friend who's going through a really hard time and we'd like to help, but we just don't know how. Sometimes going to the EAP can be just getting that advice or a little coaching to help us get through that or to help that other person. Your counseling program provided by Elkhart Community Schools, your benefit includes 4 visits per family member. And this is a rather generous benefit, 4 per family member. There is no out-of-pocket cost to the employee. It is solution-oriented counseling. That means you go in with the problem, the counselor helps you come to a solution, figure out how to deal with it so that you can move on as quickly as possible. And it is confidential. Now, when we say 4 visits, that is what your program calls for. but there could be some exceptions that if someone maybe needs one more visit just to finish an issue, or there's some special circumstances, it is possible that you could get an additional service beyond 4, maybe 5. You would call New Avenues to discuss that, and it would be up to New Avenues to determine if those circumstances merit additional visits. Otherwise, you can continue counseling through your health plan. It's a seamless transition. You finish the counseling, and then you can go on from New Avenues, and you go on through your health plan to continue on with whatever the provisions of your health plan provide. So who is eligible? All active, full-time, and part-time employees and the immediate family members of their household, living in the household. Now, if you have adult children up to age 26 who are not living in your household, but they are covered under your health insurance, they are also included in this EAP. It starts your first day of employment and it ends your last day of employment. Today we have many options for counseling. In the past, you had to go to a provider's office and have face-to-face visits. You can still do the face-to-face visits, or you have the option of telephonic counseling with a licensed clinician, secure video counseling, or you can use the iConnect app, messaging video chat counseling that's you can access through our website. So it is very, very easy to access any counseling services through this program. Confidentiality and privacy are paramount. When you access your counseling benefit through New Avenues, you are ensured privacy. We have a variety of procedures in place to ensure that what goes on between you and your counselor stays between the two of you. Elkhart Community Schools is not going to even know that you called us. They get no report about who went or what department, no information that would identify you. They will get reports regularly about numbers, how many people, the numbers of people who accessed to see if it is being used. And if it is not being used according to the number of statistics that we would expect, then that means we need to do more promotion to get people to remember and realize what a benefit that they have. But no one here is going to get any information regarding your name, your identity, your problem, nothing like that. Now, there are some exceptions that are legal. Is if a counselor becomes aware that you are going to hurt yourself or that the client is going to hurt someone else, or if there's an issue of child abuse or elder abuse, the counselor is required by law to report that for the protection of those individuals. But other than that, the service is completely confidential. Now, how does it work? You or your family member would call New Avenues, and you would talk to a customer service representative who is going to do an intake. So when you call, you need to have about 15 minutes or so where you can be in a place where you can speak privately and you have the time to answer the questions. The intake person is going to ask you things like your name, which company or organization you work for, what is your insurance plan. We need to know about your insurance so that if you wish to continue beyond your 4 sessions, it is an easy transition to move you over to your insurance. They're also going to ask you a little bit about your concern because we want to match you with a provider who best meets your type of needs. They will ask you about your location. Do you want a provider near where you work, near your home? So there are a number of questions so that we can get you the best service possible. So once you do that, the customer service rep is going to get you set up, If your problem is routine, if it's a case, well, I've got a lot of stress, or, I think I'm having some issues with my adolescent, I'd really like to get some tips on how to deal with them. That would be routine, and it may take maybe 3 to 5 days to get you set up for an appointment. If it's urgent, 2 days, or if it's an emergency, it will be taken care of immediately. Now, these time frames are going to depend also on how flexible you are, because we have to match your schedule with that of a provider who would be available to meet you. Now, if somebody says, I can only do Tuesdays at 6 o'clock, that's going to make it a little bit harder. But we're going to do our best to get you set up with someone as quickly as possible. Now, keep in mind that when you want to access your EAP visits, you need to call New Avenues. Don't call a counselor, get it set up, and then call New Avenues. It has to go through New Avenues for this to work. Now, who are you going to see? Oh, dear, I didn't give you the right slide. Okay, sorry about that. This is the intake procedure, if you want to take a quick look at that. Okay, now who are you going to see? New Avenues is located in South Bend, but we have a network of providers all over the United States and overseas. And we have a number of providers in this area, Elkhart, Goshen, Osceola, Mishawaka. We have them everywhere. We have independent therapists who operate out of their own offices. We have licensed clinical social workers, marriage and family therapists, psychologists, licensed alcohol and drug counselors. And so we will match you with the person who best meets your particular need. But we have a number of providers from whom to choose. The work-life Resource Center I had mentioned earlier, it's a database on our website, and it's absolutely phenomenal. You go in there, and it's easy access. You would go to www.newavenuesonline.com, and then you would put in your password, EAP, very easy. And we've got literature that has all this information for you that you can pick up afterwards. But you would go in there, and you would click on the Work-Life Resource Center, and it is a web-based program that has over 3,500 articles on any number of topics: health, wellness, family, parenting, aging, careers, transitions, all kinds of things. News for you, a number of other articles, live well, health tools, tips and resources. There are interactive tools that you can use for health assessments. There is a savings center where you can go in and make purchases at name brand stores for name brand items at up to a 25% discount, airlines, restaurants, coupons, all sorts of things. There's Tax Act for getting help for preparing your taxes, and there are a variety of databases that you can search for anything that you want to know. And this, again, is also confidential. When you go into our website and you start searching or using any of these tools, it is not being tracked. There is no way anybody knows who is going in there and what they're looking for. So your confidentiality is assured. Now, when you go in there to our website, you're going to see this, and you go up to the link, this particular link, and you go down to the Work-Life Resource Center, and you click on that, and then you're going to get the place to put in your password, EAP. That's going to bring up the home page that looks like this. And as you look at that home page, it's got a number of topics along the side. It's parenting, aging, thriving, all sorts of things, and you click on those, and you're going to get a drop-down or several drop-down boxes that are going to provide you with the articles and the interactive tools and the quizzes and the different types of resources that are available in there. Please take a little bit of time to look at that, because I think you'll be amazed at the amount of information and the resources that you have available there. So we have a table out front that has brochures, and it has benefit sheets that list more about this EAP and what's available, how to access it, phone numbers, and who's eligible, all that information. So please stop at the New Avenues booth, pick up the literature, and if you have any questions, feel free to talk to us. We'll be available for you. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And have a great and a very healthy year.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Okay, so for our second part of why SEL is coming up, but I have a question. Would you like to earn an additional $3,000 this year? Well, thanks to our Dr. T and the leadership team's thought process and forward thinking in terms of getting everybody trained in SEL and in PSYOP, and also our collaboration with the United Way. The program is called Thrive, and it is not income related. If you sign up, it's a year-long process, but it's $1,000. We are going to be offering 2 forms of training, PSYOP and trauma-informed. You will have your own access, your own login, and after the completion of 4 modules, you will be paid a stipend of $500 per module, thanks to the leadership team this year, and thanks to knowing that SEL is important for us to capacity build. Okay, so yes, there is work to do that, but it is work that will build your capacity as a teacher. We'll be giving you information on that. Dr. Sines.
Right. Okay, thanks for coming back. If we could pull up my other PowerPoint, it should be there. Let's see if we can get that up. Let's see there. Should be on the desktop, actually. Yeah, Elkhart session 2. Yep. Boom. There we go. Thank you all for coming back. So again, I said my goal was to encourage you and to equip you. I hope my story encouraged you. I hope you're reminded that my life is living proof that what you do matters. And again, I would argue that in a year like what we just went through and moving into this next year, what you do matters more than it ever has. Even when you feel, understandably, ineffective, irrelevant, tired, all of those things that are understandable feelings, again, I would say that what you do absolutely matters. So what I'm going to do now is just give you a little kind of introduction to SEL and how we do SEL and how what the training will look like tomorrow and moving forward with our curricula. So the equipped classroom, you see the EQ there, that stands for emotional quotient. We have IQ, which is intellectual quotient. Emotional quotient is a shorthand for emotional intelligence. So let's look at these. I'm going to answer these questions in the next 30 minutes. When we think about supporting students' behavior, why can't we just continue with behavior management? Behavior management, there's a time and a place for it, but it's becoming less and less effective, and I'll explain why. Next question is, what is research supporting instead of that? So if we can't use these tools that we've used for years and years and years, what should we be doing? Hint, SEL. What is adult SEL? And then what is student SEL? So those are the questions I'm going to be answering. So here's the deal. This first question. When we think about supporting students, why is behavior management not the tool anymore? So that's where I did my postdoc at Brown. That was Bradley Hospital. That was the leading edge of mental health intervention 20 years ago. Whenever a police car or an ambulance or a minivan pulled into that drive, we knew it was all hands on deck, and those kids would get individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy, psychiatry, nutrition, social work, OT, PT. I mean, it was the full complement of services. That was the front line, the leading edge of mental health intervention. Fast forward 20 years, And the front line of mental health intervention is your classroom. As scary as that sounds, that's a reality. I have an outpatient clinic in College Station, Texas, with 30 providers, 30 staff, master's and doctoral level. On a slow day, we're going to get 10 calls. Can you see my kid for therapy? On a busy day, we're going to get 40 or 50. And we just don't have space to see everyone. And what we know as clinicians is that the kids that need therapy the most, they're never going to make it to our clinic. They don't have a parent that can afford to take off work, pick them up, get them to the clinic, sit in a waiting room for an hour, then get them back to school, then get back to work. It's just not, outpatient mental health therapy is not accessible, which is why schools are becoming the front line of mental health intervention. It's going to be your classroom. So that's the new reality. And that, I say new reality, that's been the case for 10 years. The pandemic didn't cause this by any stretch. The pandemic just exposed how bad things really were in terms, because those of us who've been working mental health for years, 10, 15 years ago, every year at this time, every August, we'd look at each other and like, is it just me or are things getting worse? You know, we saw kids with more and more psychopathology at younger and younger ages. So the pandemic didn't cause this. It certainly didn't help things, but it didn't cause it. This has been a reality for years. 20% of our teenagers have a severe mental disorder, not mild, not moderate, severe, and less than half of them are going to get treatment for a number of reasons. And this was before the pandemic, so I'm imagining that even now those numbers are even higher. So let me just make an observation about what happened this morning. Thank God that we have someone who can stand on a stage and say, hey, by the way, you have access to therapy, you know, so just know that you can get counseling if you need it. That was wonderful. What still breaks my heart is that we still live in a society where we have to caveat that and say, don't worry, you're not in trouble. Nobody's going to tell. It's a big secret. I mean, we still have the stigma of mental health. And I think about the Olympians, you know, that are saying, like, I'm not going to compete because my mental health is more important. And it's been women athletes that have done that. And I just think, man, thank you so much. I love the way these young women are leading out in destroying the stigma of mental health. No one would hesitate to say, I had strep throat, I had to go see a doctor, he gave me some medicine, I think I'm going to be okay, but I need to stay at my house for a little bit until I get better. No one's going to hesitate that. But I have symptoms of depression. I went to my doctor, I'm on antidepressant, I'm going to take a few days off. No one would say that. And I think it goes to the stigma, you know. There are some other mechanical reasons like lack of resources and things like that, but there's still a big problem with it, which again is why our schools are becoming the front line of mental health intervention. So here's the deal. We say to you teachers, those of you who work in the classroom or administrators, your classrooms are now the front line of mental health intervention, you're it. And you're thinking, what? I'm an educator. I got my degree was in English, you know, I'm not a mental health professional, you know, to be dealing with these kids and all this trauma and all this emotion. And we say, we got you covered, no problem. We know you're going to have a lot of emotion in your classroom. So here's the deal. We've got a toolkit that we put together in 1950. And number one, you have sticks, right? So if those kids act up, man, you kick them out. You send them to the office. You kick them out of school, all that. That really became popular in the late 60s and the early 70s. A lot of political turmoil, a lot of racial turmoil. And what we found is that by the mid-70s, we were just kicking kids out of school left and right, left and right. There's an axiom in psychology that says if the behavior doesn't change, the intervention's not working. Okay? It's just real simple. If the behavior doesn't change, the intervention's not working. If these sticks, if the intent of those interventions were to increase academic performance, then what you would expect would be that where you see more of these, academic performance would increase, right? There's a correlation, but it's negative. The more you see sticks, the lower, when you look at organizations like campuses or district levels, the more a district does these things, the lower the collective level of academic achievement is. So we figured that out, and we started thinking, well, maybe we should do something different. A time and a place for it, absolutely, but this can't be our go-to intervention. So then in the late 90s, early 2000s, right around the time IDEA was reauthorized, we said, let's focus on the carrots. Let's call it positive behavior support. So instead of trying to, you know, like in my day, you literally got hit with a stick. There was like a literal stick that hit your butt, right? Instead of doing that, let's just encourage kids. Let's support them and, you know, all of it. And so it's like, great. Finally, we're moving away from sticks into carrots. So that's that. And then there's this one huge power tool in schools, and that's called special ed. And that's really where the intense services, special ed in the house, right? Somos compadres, amigo. Special ed, yeah, that's where all the services are. So there's this, what happens is in our zeal to help kids, we know that's where the services are. So really what happens often is that we overqualify kids in our desire to get them help, and then what happens is that sort of dilutes the service of special ed, and it decreases treatment fidelity. So no one's really getting good intervention in that model, especially the kids that truly have disabilities. So that's what we've been working with all these years, and there's just so much data that show that this isn't enough. There's teacher data that says, it doesn't matter how many times we suspend them, it doesn't matter how many times we try to encourage them, it's not helping. They've tried special ed, that didn't, So there's a lot of data that show that while there's a time and a place for it, we need more. So here's the deal. Acting out behavior is usually a symptom of a deeper issue like emotional distress. So a commitment to behavior management is a commitment to symptom management. And sticks and carrots it's rooted in behavioral psychology. I mean, you think Pavlov and teaching dogs to salivate at the sound of a bell, and Skinner and the rats and all that. That's all that is. It's behavioral psychology. It's just how can I bring pleasure and how can I bring pain to change the way you're acting? And again, in 1950s, it worked like a charm. Not anymore. Not anymore. So as long as we're just committed to sticks and carrots, we're committed to managing symptoms, and we never get to the root of the issue. So that's the insight number one. Insight number two is that we are never rewarded or punished into the best version of ourselves. We are relationshiped into the best version of ourselves. So I work with student athletes at Texas A&M. I coach high school track and field. My son was a D1 athlete. They're not sticked or carroted into a gold medal. You think about the Olympics. Those athletes didn't get there because there was a great set of sticks and a great set of carrots. They were there because people built relationships with them and nurtured talent. That's how that works. And there's so much data in the workplace that says that the little gold pin that you get after 10 years or the gold watch you get after 30 years or the employee of the month, that's fine, but that's really not what drives peak performance vocationally. It's more the internal rewards. And the same is true with academic achievement or behavioral achievement. Kids don't become the best selves because we have great, great sticks and great, great carrots. They become their best selves because we have great relationships. So that was the first question. That's why we can't just continue with behavior management. It's not going to work. It's not, especially when I think about these kids are going to be coming back, and there's going to be a lot of what we call adjustment disorders with kids. Meaning it's not a true mood disorder, it's not a true anxiety disorder. They're demonstrating symptoms of depression and anxiety, but it's not a disorder. It doesn't meet the diagnostic threshold. They're just adjusting to a stressor in their life, like a pandemic. Those kids, they're going to present with behavioral issues, but they're not going to qualify for special ed because they're going to make satisfactory academic progress. They're going to inch along because they're smart enough to inch along, but there's something going on. And again, sticks and carrots aren't going to be the tool to help them. So that's why behavior management, we need those things, but it's not enough. So what do we need? What is research supporting instead of behavior management? It's social and emotional learning, SEL. So that's the new tool. When we talk about social emotional learning, what does that mean? Well, it starts here with self-awareness. I need to know what I'm thinking, and I need to know what I'm feeling, what's going on inside of me. And when I become aware of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, then I can manage it. But I can't manage what I'm not aware of. And I say this all the time. When kids understand their inner world, their thoughts and their feelings, and they manage their inner world, behavior manages itself. There's no need for behavior management when I'm practicing skills of knowing what I'm thinking and feeling and saying it's okay to think and feel those things. How can I link that emotion with an adaptive behavior? How can I express this in ways that are life-giving instead of life-sucking? When we manage feelings, behavior manages itself. That's where it starts. It starts with social awareness or self-awareness. Then I can manage it. When I'm aware of my thoughts and feelings, when I'm regulated, I'm centered. And when I'm centered and calm, then I can look at you and know what you're thinking and feeling. And that's called empathy, social awareness. And when I know what you're thinking and feeling, I can connect with you using relationship skills, social skills. Then we make good decisions. And what this thing looks like in an adult is, well, let's start with a student. Let's say a student's not aware of what they're thinking and feeling, and because they're not aware of it, they're not regulating it. And good things or bad things are happening on social media. Bad things are happening at home. Bad things are happening in the classroom, on the football field, in the hallway, at the bus stop. Bad things are happening. Bad. All this emotion is building up. They're not even aware of it. So what do? They end up at school, and they have a gun. Now everybody's going to know what I'm thinking and feeling. Watch this. That's not what we want, obviously. Versus the student that says, my life sucks right now. I'm overwhelmed about this. Oh, we talked about it in class. Yeah, these are the thoughts, these are the feelings. Instead of going to a gun, let me go to an adult. Let me tell an adult what I'm thinking and feeling. That's effective decision making, right? So that's how this plays out in the life of a student. For a teacher, it's this. I'm overwhelmed. Last year nearly did me in. I caught my breath a little bit over the summer, but I'm going to be depleted by Labor Day. And I've got the rest of the year to do this, right? So just being real. I've got another year. I've got the rest of the year to get through. I feel tired. I feel burned out. I feel overwhelmed. I feel frustrated. I feel powerless. I feel ineffective. And I've got students whose emotional needs are great, and I just feel like I'm done. So in those moments, I as a teacher get up and say something like, man, why don't y'all just shut up? Why can't y'all learn? Y'all are making me mad. Shut up right now. We're going to do a lesson in anger management. Y'all shut up, right? That kind of stuff. That's me not living a self-aware, self-regulated life as the adult in the classroom versus me thinking, I'm stressed out, I'm overwhelmed, I'm entitled to those feelings. It's nobody's job to tell me what I need to feel or think. I get to think and feel what I think and feel. That's my privilege. That's my liberty. My responsibility is to regulate that effectively so that I don't turn into a life sucker in front of kids or in front of families or in front of my colleagues. So that's what effective decision-making looks like at an adult level. So does this thing really work? So you're saying, Adam, sticks, carrots, there's a time and a place for it, but it's really not scratching the itch. What does research say does scratch the itch? It's SEL. But does it really? Do we have empirical evidence that this new tool is really effective? This meta-analysis is 10 years old, and I think Mark Brackett at Yale did another one probably about 3 years ago and found similar results. So Joe Durlock, I think, is at Loyola, and he looked at 213 SEL programs across the country. Small schools, big schools. Schools in poverty, affluent schools, mostly minority schools, mostly majority. Like, he looked at everything and basically said, does it work? Does it really work? And the resounding answer was absolutely. When schools practice SEL, kids win and adults win. And there's SEL is as at least, if not more, empirically validated than any academic intervention we have. Math, reading, language arts, SEL ranks up there in terms of having a gold standard of authenticity. So yes, it works. This is from the Handbook of Social and Emotional Learning. Students are more successful in school and in daily life when they know themselves, self-awareness, when they can manage themselves, self-regulation, take the perspective of others, that's empathy, relate effectively with them, that's social skills, and make sound choices, that's effective decision-making. So we know it works. We know this works, and it's worth doing. And it gets to a deeper level than sticks and carrots will ever get to. I'm going to come back to this slide when I talk about child-focused SEL. But for now, let me change one word in that. Let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry. There are two types. So we know SEL works. We know kids benefit, and we know adults benefit. There are two types of SEL. One is a dedicated model. And that's sort of like you've got a printed curricula, and the counselor will come in and do a lesson. So it's a dedicated, we're going to do, for this 20-minute window this week, this is SEL time. That's called dedicated SEL. There's also another model, and that's infused. And what infused means is that we're not just going to have a curricula. Yeah, the curricula is great, and it's helpful, and it really gets us focused, but we as adults are going to live it out. There's this idea that, and this goes back to Albert Bandura's work in social, what he called it social referencing, which means that kids, when they have questions, the first Wikipedia page they go to is the adult. The life that I live answers questions that kids have about the nature of the world, about the nature of people in the world. Is this a safe place? Can I trust? All of that. So infused SEL is sort of like, let's make SEL not just this printed thing that we do for 20 minutes a week. Let's choose to live SEL. Let's practice it as adults, and let's, as adults, become the living interventions that we really already are for kids. Since I'm the Wikipedia page that they're referencing everywhere, at football games, at track meets, at swim meets, at Walmart, at church, in the playground, at the bus stop. They're looking at me. Let me be mindful about what I'm communicating to them so that I can model SEL for them. That's infused. And our curricula, or our SEL program, is both of those. There's a printed curricula that, and let me just say this, plug quick for teachers. It was written by teachers. It's meant to be user-friendly. Thank God I didn't write it. It would suck if I wrote it, because I speak psychobabble. And Melissa and a team of educators who were teachers said, Adam, this needs to be user-friendly, and what you're doing is not user-friendly. They translate my psychobabble into teacher, and they make it very, very user-friendly. So just know that we're aware of that. So that's our curricula. It's both. It's dedicated and it's infused. Now, moving forward. There we go. Okay, so that was one question I answered. We talked about that. What does research support? It supports SEL. Now, what is adult SEL? So there's this idea, again, that I'm the living Wikipedia page, right? I mean, I'm who kids are looking at. Yes, they're looking at social media. Yes, they're looking at Snapchat and Instagram and Twitter and all that other stuff. But they're really looking at me, to answer the question, which means that I, as an adult, need to practice SEL. So what does that look like? I changed one word here. I read this and it says students are more effective. Here's the deal. Change one word, adults. I'm more effective. And so when I started researching SEL and thinking about writing a curricula, because I knew that my outpatient clinic is not the front line of mental health intervention, I knew that your classroom is. And we wanted to do something to empower you, because you feel hopeless, you feel helpless, you feel vulnerable as an adult who was not trained in mental health, and you've got these emotional issues in your classroom, and you're thinking, no, I had one chapter on behavior management, and I'm supposed to deal with this, right? We knew that. And so when I started doing research to build a program that would help you in the classroom, one of the most compelling bits of research that I found is this. The most effective SEL programs start with adult SEL. And that resonated with me clinically, because after 20 years of clinical practice, I remember in the early days, I would see kids one-on-one. And I figured out real quick that it didn't do me any good to spend 50 minutes with a child in my office if I knew they were going into a family system that was grossly dysfunctional, where the adults were tired and burned out. So what I started doing was, when students would come in, I would say to the parents, how are you, though? Like, let's not talk about the kid. How are you? How's your finances? How's your health? How's your relationship with your husband, your wife, your ex, your in-laws? How's work? And one of two things would happen. Either they would say, wait, ho, I'm not the identified patient. My kid is. So you just give him the medication and undepress him, right? Or they would say, I never thought about that, but I am the most important part of my child's environment. Yes, I need help too. So I very quickly in my clinical practice started doing a lot more parenting work, because I realized if the parents are healthy, every kid in the home benefits from that. And then we can start working with kids. Well, the same thing is true in schools. When adults are healthy, every student benefits from it. So that's, again, the rationale for an adult-focused SEL. A good program should have a very, very healthy SEL component. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. If you're empty, you got nothing to give. And so SEL needs to fill you up. It needs to nurture you. So let's move forward then. There's my book, The EQ Intervention. Again, the most compelling bit of starting research for me was, it's got to start with me as the adult. It's got to start with me as the adult. So that's the new tool. SEL is the new tool. And we talked about it. Another way to think of this graph here, another way to think of that is this. Self-awareness and self-regulation. So it starts with me being self-aware as an adult, self-regulated as an adult. When I add to that empathy, what are you thinking and feeling, colleague, parent, student, and how can I connect with you? That makes good educational systems. That makes good classrooms. That makes me good, not just as a teacher, as a husband, as a wife, as an ex, as a daughter, as a neighbor, as a colleague, as a member of my religious organization. When I practice SEL, when I practice emotional intelligence, I manifest peak performance in any role that I have, not just in the classroom. So there's a huge win for me in that. So self-awareness is what am I thinking and feeling. Self-regulation is how do I regulate that? The thoughts that I have that I'm terrified that people would know that I have. What do I do with that? The feelings I have that I'm terrified people would know. What do I do with that? That's self-regulation. Empathy. What are you thinking and feeling? Interpersonal skills. How can we connect? And then effective decision making. What should we do? That's where you are. This is where I am. How can we come together and put a good plan in place to be effective, to be life givers? So it starts with adult SEL, self-awareness and self-regulation. So it raises the question, what do I need to be aware of and what do I need to regulate? I talked about thoughts and feelings, and certainly that's a big piece of it, but there are a few other things here. Printer, okay. Can we escape that? Printer, okay. Awesome, thank you. I'm not trying to print, man, promise. Here we go. Here we go. Now, for real. These three domains here. I need to be aware of my personality. I need to be aware of my emotions and my stress. I'm a psychologist. I'm a test nerd. That's what I live for, is giving tests and analyzing data. That's what I was trained to do. So when I started thinking about this, that I as an adult need to be aware of my personality and my emotions and my stress, I thought, we need a test to measure that. So I created one, and I worked with my colleagues at Texas A&M. We created an online assessment called the EASEL, E-A-S-E-L, and that stands for Educator Assessment of Social and Emotional Learning. Anyone that will be in our training tomorrow, you need to take this. So please take a picture of that right now. That's dedicated for Elkhart. This is your data. So that QR code will take you to our website so you can take this online test. It takes about 20 minutes. So take a picture of that QR code. And please tonight invest 20 minutes for those of you who will be in the workshops tomorrow, because you'll need this. This measures your personality and your vulnerability to stress. Okay? Moving forward. All right, y'all freaked out. Okay. Okay. Now, if you didn't get it, text somebody and they'll give it to you. I'm going to skip through this because we're limited on time. Anyone? Okay, let's move forward. Can someone back there hop on the keypad? This isn't working very well. And just forward through those. Yeah, keep going all the way. We'll talk more. These are aspects of personality. Let's stop right there. These are the 5 dimensions of personality. So we're it's called OCEAN. That refers to the big 5. This measures personality. This determines how I lead a classroom. This determines how I enter into a relationship. This determines how I connect with people. So I need to be aware of that, and tomorrow we'll go into detail about what this actually means for you. Okay, let's go forward. Thank you. Okay, so that's one thing, is I need to be aware of my personality. Keep going. The other thing is stress. Stress determines how I lead my classroom. Stress determines how I relate with you. Stress determines how I perceive the world around me. So we'll also talk about stress management as adult SEL. So let's go to the next one. Next slide. And so instead of fight or flight, I put engage or disengage. And we're going to talk tomorrow about how do I engage as a life giver in ways that are helpful and not be a hurtful life sucker when I get stressed out. How do I disengage, flight, in ways that are helpful and not be a passive-aggressive life sucker when I get stressed out. So we'll talk about that, okay? And again, the more I can implement these ideas as an adult, the more self-regulated I am, the more sustainable I am, the more secure I am, and the more of a secure base I am, to use attachment language for people that are depending on me. Remember I said earlier, one of the most loving things I can do for people depending on me is to offer them the best version of me. Knowing and regulating this creates the best version of me. This is what puts me at peak performance. Okay, let's go on. Past that and past the next one. Next slide. Keep going. Now let's talk the last one. Yes, we talked about adult SEL, and now What is student SEL? The last thing I'll talk about. So that's the work that I need to do as the adult. Again, SEL is not something that we do to kids. It's something, there's no such thing as professional development for SEL. SEL, by definition, is personal development. It's about me developing my person so that I can be more effective in front of kids. Having done that, having gone through the steps of being self-aware and self-regulated, now I'm in a better position. I'm more empowered to help lead kids through that. So what does leading kids through that look like? Let's go to the next slide. Again, students are more effective when they're doing that. Okay, forward. So number one, go to the next, right there, VUCA. Let's talk about what that is. Bring up the next image. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. This is the world that our kids are living in. And it's not just me saying, like, back in my day, back in the 80s, this is how bad life sucked. Compared to now, it's horrible. I'm talking about if you graduated high school, well, if you're teaching, by definition, you've gone through university and you've got a degree. That was 5 years ago. High school is different than it was for you 5 years ago. There are apps in place now that weren't in place 5 years ago. And so this thing is just going and going, and kids are living in this incredible world. So you have that for everybody, including a global pandemic. All the kids went through that. Go to the next slide. Some of them are going to have adverse childhood experiences. By definition, a global pandemic is an adverse childhood experience. That's who's coming to us very, very soon, is these kids that are living in VUCA, an unpredictable world. Some of them have significant trauma. And what they're doing, go to the next slide, is they want to know if their SCARF needs are going to be met. So go to all, there's 5 of those. What is my importance in this classroom? What is my level of predictability in this classroom? How much control will I have? How much potential for connections will I have? And how much fairness will the leader show? Will the leader show bias or favoritism? That's who's coming into our classroom. Those kids who are dysregulated, who are scared, who are freaked out, they're looking at me, the adult, as the living Wikipedia page to say, hey, what's my experience going to be like here? And do you see here, when you look at the subtext going on, when you look at the developmental trajectory that our kids are on, sticks and carrots don't touch this. Our kids are presenting with issues that you don't carrot or stick away, or you don't special ed away. There's a time and a place for all of that. But there's this deeper work that must be done. Yes, it's personal. Yes, it's intensive. And we have 2 options. Are we as educators going to do the hard work like we've always done, because we're resilient, we do what needs to be done? Or are we just going to continue thinking that the old stuff is going to work when we know it won't? I mean, that's sort of this crossroads that we are, the country, not just education, but the country, is that we as educators are facing it up front because we work with youth directly in ways that other people don't. But that's sort of what's going on. So let's go to the last slide. The other thing with kids, emotion. They're coming in with a lot of emotion for the reasons that I just talked about. So we can do a lot of things. We can ignore it and just act like they're not emotional and just live in denial. Nope, they're not emotional. They're fine. Everybody's good. Not helpful. We can inhibit it. You can be mad, you can be sad, but you leave it outside. When you come into my classroom, we don't do anger here. We don't do confusion here. We don't do frustration here. We don't do sadness here. This is turn that frown upside down and we're all going to be happy. So you inhibit it, right? That's not helpful, because as long as you're ignoring emotion, as long as you're inhibiting emotion, you can never instruct it. Next one, invalidate emotion. You're angry? Well, you shouldn't be angry. You should be happy because you have me as a teacher. Do you know how many starving children in Africa would kill to be in your situation? And you've got a hot meal and you've got a family to go to. Some kids don't even have a family. You need to be happy. Not helpful. It's not our business to tell kids what they need to think and feel. They get to feel what they feel and they get to think what they think. That's it. So these keep us from getting in and really instructing emotion. When we invite emotion, man, that's scary. And what that means is, hey, kids, feel what you want to feel. And let me say this, for campus level administrators, your teachers get to feel what they feel, administrators. I know that's hard, but if they're angry, they get to feel angry. If they're frustrated, they get to feel frustrated. If they're sad and confused, they get to feel all of that. They also have to regulate it. That's on them too, but it's not our job to tell adults how they need to feel or not feel, or parents. Okay. So we invite it and we say, hey, whatever you feel, bring it to the table. That's scary because emotion is energy. So you bring all this fuel to the table and you say, man, what if somebody lights a match and this whole thing goes kaboom? Yep. I need to think as an emotional engineer. If I'm an engineer, I think that emotion is gasoline. If I put gasoline in that machine called a truck can get me to Walmart and make my life better. That fuel is called natural gas. If I connect that to a stove, I can use that machine to heat my food and make my body better. That fuel is called electricity. If I can hook that electricity to my computer, the computer is a machine that makes my life better. That's how we think of emotion. So anger is one fuel, sadness is one fuel, anxiety is one fuel, happiness is one fuel, joy is a fuel. And the whole goal, emotional literacy, is about saying, oh, those fuel sources, all of those emotions are energy. How do we connect those energies to behaviors that make our life better? So we don't need to be afraid of anger because we connect anger to behaviors that make our life better. We don't need to be afraid of sadness because we connect sadness to behaviors that make our life better. That's emotional literacy. That's adaptive functioning. Again, sticks and carrots don't get to that level of depth, but when we start doing that work, kids start to understand their inner world. I don't need to be afraid of these feelings. I don't need to feel panic. I don't have to explode. There's a roadmap for me to connect this energy to a behavior that you will like, and because you like it, it's going to make my life better. That's what student-focused SEL looks like. So these are the questions that I answered very, very quickly. When we think about supporting students with behavior, why can't we just use with behavior management? Because it's not working. It's not working. Not for what we're dealing with. There's a time and a place for it, absolutely. I'm not saying get rid of the sticks or the carrots or the special. We need that. But it's not going to scratch this itch that we're feeling. What does research support? It supports SEL robustly. I mean, there's just no question about when we do this thing, it's good. You become more self-regulated. You become more sustainable. You become better at what you're doing in every domain. And then kids get better. Behaviorally, they develop pro-social relationships. They develop the capacity for self-regulation, all of which allows them to learn because they're more regulated. So academics increase. It starts with me as the adult living this out. It's not professional development. It is very personal. It's personal development. Yes, that's scary. Yes, that can be threatening. But if I do the work, I become better. Everybody that's depending on me wins. My spouse wins, my ex wins, my children win, my parents win, my siblings win, my students win, my colleagues win. Everybody wins, including me. And then with kids, same thing. When kids practice adult SEL, same deal. They do better across the board. So that's it. So tomorrow we're working with some campuses. We are just so excited. The rest of the team will be here tonight. And man, we're going to kill it. We're going to kill it. And I know that there are people in this room that are excited about this work, and I'm here to tell you, you will not be sorry that you engaged it. So that's all I got. I know it's time to break. Any other comments? Thank you all for listening to that.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Sines. And we will work it out where you will get 2 CRUs for attending this training session. So you'll be getting an email to work that part out. But in closing, I just want to bring up the SEL task force. They're sitting over there real quick. We chose people from all generations. We have some baby boomers. We have some Generation Z, some Generation X. A couple of them are reincarnated. So we tried to get everybody on board, especially the technology immigrants and the technology natives. It's the technology natives that have helped us to spread this training or to scale this training to meet everyone in the district where they are in terms of bringing us closer to social emotional learning and integrating that into our daily schooling. So because we promised, Carrie, that we will be out of here by 11, we'll just file through and say our names. And with that, we hope you have a fantastic school year. You brought great energy to this room. We are in the position to do something very great. Screw the pandemic. It's almost over.
I'm Todd Kelly.
Lindsay Brander. Lisa Ernsberger.
Tony England.
There'll be pay later for that.
Brian Hammontree.
Matt Garber.
Eric Chandler.
Natalie Bickle. And Rhiannon Harrison.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Let's go, Lions.